It's time for MacBreak Weekly. The gang has assembled. Jason Snell is here from sixcolors.com. Andy Anatko from WGBH in Boston. Office Hours Alex Lindsay. We will talk about the new TSMC plant making Apple chips, but is it enough to wean Apple off its dependence on China? Probably not. 20 new products expected this year. We'll do the Gurman report. And we'll talk about new features that might be coming to the Apple Watch. That and a whole lot more coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 955, recorded Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. Squeeze, don't shake. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest Apple news with Andy Anatko from GBH in Boston. Hello, Andrew.
Hey there, hi there, ho there.
Good to see you in your comfortable, cozy abode featuring books and a view of the river.
Yes, and they've locked. Actually, there's also a view of a very, very football-shaped squirrel as I was closing the blinds.
Oh, that's good.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, what if you're best protected not only from the heat, from the cold weather when you're a squirrel like that, but also if a hawk tries to carry you off, that's got to be like 10-foot claws to get even through the layer of fat into the muscle. So you're good.
A football-shaped squirrel. We already have a title, and we haven't even introduced the other panelists.
Yes,
it's amazing.
New personal best.
It's amazing. Alex Lindsay is also here from officehours.global and 090 Media. Hi, Alex.
Hello. I'm spinning up the Midjourney for a football-shaped squirrel. So we'll see what we'll
wow.
Come back to me a little later in the show. We'll see what we've created so far.
Alex, in my Google Photos, I am well supplied with football. I'm sure that when you Midjourney football-shaped squirrel, it's basically educated from my training set. So,
and also Jason Snell from Six Colors. I've been looking for news, is what I'm doing right now.
Yes, me too.
Six Colors.
Aren't we all?
Sixcolors.com and Macworld. And hi, Jason.
Hi, Leo.
Is there any news? Is there anything going on in the Apple?
It's real quiet out there right now. Almost too quiet.
It's like the only news is like, oh, good, Gurman has his first newsletter of the year, yay!
Oh, and it was the lightest weight newsletter.
It was
ever.
a recap of his reports about what was going to happen this year from
nothing. Yeah,
earlier this.
I think
without Macworld Expo, you got nothing really on January, right?
Yeah, CES, right, which doesn't have a lot of Apple. There's a little Apple relevance, but not a lot. Not a lot.
But didn't he have something on the Apple Watch Ultra that will have not blood pressure sensing, but at least blood pressure alerts? I think that was new.
Apparently there was at CES a company. I wish I could remember the technology. I was here. Father Robert was telling me about it on Sunday on Twit. That does non-invasive glucose monitoring that can go in a watch-sized device. It wasn't radar, which is what the University of Waterloo came up with last year. It's some other technology. And I'm very curious about it. And I imagine Apple is, already on the horn, to whoever that is, saying, let's do it. So I would, Ultra 3 is supposed to come out this year. I'm a devoted Ultra fan, and it's been 2 years. It'll have been.
It's a cool watch. Yeah,
I love my.
I'd love to see, like, if there is like a new Apple Watch SE, I would love to see them introduce like even a third styling. Because it's easy to confuse like an SE for like the regular ones, but also it's one of the greatest things about they anticipate when Apple was planning a watch is that, wow, this is the first time that Apple gets to design something that is, yes, it's technology, but it is firmly in the arena of like style, of like fashion, of jewelry, of something you wear. And I've been really, really keen to see them not just go with the same square pillow design year after year after year, but to give us something interesting and something different, like the Ultra, which is just wonderful.
Well, the Ultra is different, isn't it? But it's still a square pillow. I mean, it's just
it's still square, but yeah. I mean, they have the mandate of making sure that like it looks tough and that it looks like when they find your body, they'll be able to get your ID off of the watch because it'll still be running.
This thing, I have no scratches, no dings, no nicks. I think partly because the titanium ring is slightly raised around the crystal. And I imagine they're also using sapphire, so that's tougher. I've been very happy with this. It's a great little watch. Once you get used to 3 pounds on your wrist, but I figure it's like a workout. I'm just pumping some.
I'm far more resistant to upgrading the Ultra. I paid a lot more for it, so I found that when I was buying the lowest end watch.
Yearly's no big. No,
it was like, we'll get another one. And the Ultra, I'm kind of like, well, it's got to be really good for me to. Well, I still have the version 1.
Oh, you haven't even gone to the 2. Well, you're going to skip to the 3 then. That'll make sense.
Yeah, I might skip to the 3. We'll see.
I think we'll see what they put in there. Now, if they put in a glucose monitor.
The glucose, I will say the glucose monitor is the thing that would move me over. Right now, the timers work great. The alarms work great. And the exercise stuff works great. So for me, 99% of how I use the watch, it's fully operational. And I don't know what I would, how many other features I need.
I will literally, I'll get to the gym and come back and get my watch before I work out because I want credit.
I went swimming last night, and usually, I keep track of all my laps, and how many hundreds of meters or whatever and I went swimming yesterday, and my watch had died. I just hadn't been plugging it in. And I was like, I almost is it really worth? It was right at the end of the day, so I couldn't go back and back. Where I was like, should I really go swimming? Because I can't. It's not going to be tracked. And I went anyway. But it was just random. I came home, and Carlita asked how far I had gone, and I was like, I have no idea. I just swam back and forth until I got tired. I looked at the time and figured out, well, I'll just swim for this amount of time and see how it goes.
I guess I swam for my health.
Yeah, exactly.
For fun. Even if we didn't collect any data on it.
That's what Lisa says. She says, well, I said, no, the watch has to know. It's not enough for me to know.
Well, no, but it's like I start off when I swim, the first 100 meters is me. The watch tells me how fast I did it. I'm always trying to
look at that.
Carve off a couple seconds off of my first 100 meters. And then after that, it's just how many meters do I get done that day. So I'm always trying to add about 50 meters a day.
Their current big ad campaign, which I saw in the, by the way, sorry about your Steelers.
I was a very low expectation. They almost got under my low expectations.
It's pretty low.
But when we entered the season, we thought it was going to be a train wreck. The fact that they were in the playoffs was kind of like, this is a bonus. And now I don't have to watch football anymore. So I don't. As soon as the Steelers season ends, it's the end of football for me.
It's over for you. It's curling now. But I saw a lot of Apple ads on there, and what were they for? They were for the watch. They were for athletes training, and it's snowing, and the watch says, "Get in out there," and they go ahead and do it.
I haven't had a new person talk to a new person. I finally bought my wife the watch over
she
Christmas.
liking it? Yeah, you mentioned
she loves it, and she's she missed her meeting, but she's going in for training, and she'll know more about it than I do soon. And but she just really enjoys it. And she was the holdout because my kids, of course, wanted them earlier than that. And so
the whole fam now is
a bunch of Apple Watches. And
is there anything you can do as a family with those? I mean,
know where everybody is.
Do you have walkie-talkie enabled?
We should do walkie-talkie. Yeah. I haven't. I had until you mentioned it.
Breaker 19. I'm en route to elementary school. Over.
Yeah, exactly. So
for a bear in the air, doing a double nickel.
I mean, I think the most popular thing is timers, but and a lot of the Apple Fitness stuff is really nice when you have the watch.
Yeah.
That ad is good. That ad is really good, and it's interesting because and it's not just for athletes. It really is it's New Year's resolution themed, right? And it's the idea that the second Friday, I guess, of the year is when everybody on average quits their resolutions. Mm-hmm. And it's basically, well, what if somebody was there to make sure you stayed on your path, and the Apple Watch will do it. I think it also, what I find interesting about it is it says something about Apple's whole philosophy of this, which is, they want to be in this space where they are encouraging you, and that they're leading people to good health through the Apple Watch actually encouraging them. Right. And what is interesting is one of Mark Gurman's rumors, in fact, for a while now, has been that they're working on this kind of AI-based health coaching system. And it has the ring of truth about it to me, because currently what the Apple Watch actually does, I mean, it's a lot of, yes, the Apple Watch will help you meet your goals, but, just add your own effort, which is, it's like, oh, we'll prod you about your rings, or we'll say, hey, you're behind schedule, maybe you should go. But it's like really not sophisticated. And when you look at that ad and you see what Apple really envisions as a mission statement for the Apple Watch in terms of keeping people fit, they really do need more active coaching that knows things about your life and your activity and can make some actionable suggestions. And, and they're not there, right? It's very simple in terms of what is offered right now. So I think that's interesting to think. We can look at this ad and see what Apple believes the end goal of the Apple Watch is, and maybe suggest what they're emphasizing in their internal development, which, Mark Gurman suggests is something that might come this year.
Yeah, and I will say that I thought when I first got it that the rings were silly, but the rings are. I mean, I definitely look at them. I mean, they're on my front face, and I look at them going, "Oh, I haven't gotten up very much, or I haven't done anything today. I need to take a walk or do something else." And so I do think that they're more. They encourage me more than I thought they would, to have them there. So to just as just kind of a picture of that day of whether I'm actually doing something. So
yeah. I mean, it's nice, but it's a little more passive than I think Apple wants it to be. I think that there is a level where I think Apple knows that there are people that they're losing because they're not able to provide enough of a framework for yeah.
I think
those people buy.
It was definitely like, hey, you haven't stood up for a while, and I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, I don't care
middle
about
of something,
that.
So.
Right, but if it's, I mean, and they talk AI, everything's an AI-based system now, right? Theoretically, but like, ideally, it would be able to adapt and know what doesn't work and what does work for different people. And like, you don't want this anymore, but I'm going to recommend this and all of that. And what they have now is kind of hard-coded, if this, then that. There's a lot of that in there. And if it annoys you, you turn it off and then you never see it again. And that's the end of the story. So I do think that that's a place where I think a more sophisticated algorithm that was trying to analyze your health data and motivate you could probably do a better job than what they're doing now.
Yeah. Particularly when not just that, but also all kinds of reminders. Where if it's there's times where I get the same reminder that I've set for myself day after day after day after day without clearing it, and AI can say, "Okay, would you? Let's take a look at this task that you really want to be reminded of, and why you're not getting that done." Things like that for exercise is also a really good thing. Not just you're being annoyed because, hey, you oh no, is something wrong? You only did like 1,200 steps today, and you normally do blah blah blah. As opposed to, okay, for this past week you've been down for the past 2 or 3 weeks. Let's have a conversation if you're interested and figure out like why maybe you're not walking so much and how we can encourage you to do more. Yeah.
And I will say that as someone who grew up working out at a gym, I just feel like, and I know that it's complicated because gyms don't change their equipment very often. And so the problem has been mostly that gyms don't change their equipment very often. And there are handfuls of things that do this at home, but usually they're kind of weird hit devices that sit on your wall or whatever. But man, I just feel like if people could walk up to a machine and see a video on how to do it, and then have it keep track, the machine tells the watch or the phone, this is how much weight it's set to, and this is how many reps. It would transform how people work out.
Aren't there machines that do that though?
There are some home machines that do it, but they don't do it. They're like goofy. I mean, it's just like they're not like the gym. They're like goofy little machines that go on your wall. That's the only ones I've seen that will really tie into your phone.
Right.
I had
Peloton, I think, because they have an app, and I bet I'll have to look.
It's Peloton.
But the app,
it's like
I'm pretty sure the app ties into Apple Health. But
it's a bike. I mean,
it's a bike, or they have treadmills now.
I like recumbent bikes to watch TV while I'm biking.
Oh no, I spin, man.
The spinning, I hate that position.
You got. If you don't feel nauseous after working out, you're really not doing it right. I'm just saying. I use an app that I really like. I guess I could recommend it, called Gentler Streak, and it is basically Apple Health with a little AI thing on top of it that they monitor your workout, but they recommend other stuff. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, it's good, and it has a lot of extra things like Tai Chi and dancing. I guess Apple Health probably has that now too. I don't know if it's worth spending money for something that does this, but I like it, and it's that AI thing you were talking about a little bit more. It's got a little more gloss on top of it. Gentler.
Yeah, it's funny. We think about how sophisticated so much of our technology is, but the truth is that I think in some ways the quest to do AI is in part out of a frustration that, in the end, you are just creating a chain of if-thens, and it's not that sophisticated, and it doesn't know you, and it doesn't learn about you, and it doesn't think about you, and a lot of stuff like the Apple Watch hardware-wise is so sophisticated. Apple's health database knows so much about you. And yet,
they train it with AI, right? I mean, it knows the difference between rowing and stepping.
But what it doesn't do is analyze what you do and when you do it and how you're doing it, and come up with an actionable kind of plan.
I think there's a reluctance to do that because of the FDA, because health recommendations becomes a little problematic. Right?
This may be why. Well, for fitness though, fitness is different than health, right?
Okay.
So
they're not saying go to the hospital. They're
exactly. Although they do. I mean, they'll give you an AFib notification and say you might want to talk to your doctor, right? Like they'll do that. And even with their Vitals app, they're doing a little exploration of this, where I think there's some machine learning involved, where they're trying to sort of notice general trends, but they're a little reluctant to go beyond that because, again, I think there are some regulatory issues. But for fitness training, I think that's why they're focused on it, according to Mark Gurman, is that one is a much less regulatable area. And I'm struck by the fact that as sophisticated as some aspects of our technology is, some of it is not that sophisticated. And it could be way better if you've got all this personal data, but the algorithms aren't personal. And so it ends up being they either work for you or they don't.
And I think this is where Apple has a key advantage, in the sense that most services that required that data to go off my phone, I would not do. Like I wouldn't interact with it.
Exactly.
And Apple
they built it on device.
Yeah. If it's all on device and it's inside of that relatively secure enclave, much more than sending it to some web company that I don't know. I'm much more likely to do it than do it.
I understand that, but it hobbles it. I mean, just look at the image factory or whatever they call that thing. It's terrible because it's on device.
I think that generating AI images and looking at my health data, I understand, more complicated.
But if you want AI to really sing, you're going to have to go off device in the long run, I think.
I don't know. I think it's a function. I think that the image generation, the Genmoji or the image playground or whatever, is really, I think the biggest thing that limits it is not the processing power. It's Apple's unwillingness to give it tools that it needs to be effective. Right. And so it's just.
That's why I use Grok. X's image generator, because it doesn't care. Grok's the honey badger.
Let it all burn.
Generators.
Like whatever you want there. Yeah,
whatever you want. I'll give it whatever you want. You want to put Trump in jail? Go right ahead. We'll do that. In fact, there were a lot of Grok generated images of Elon Musk as a puppet master with Donald Trump attached to the strings. That I thought, wow, Elon allows that, huh? Well, maybe Elon likes it. I don't know. I guess we could talk about this. There's some other things we'll talk about, but that have more to do with Apple. But at CES, this company named BEE, like a bumblebee, showed this. They actually were I had bought that from this week, like 2 or 3 things that do this. There's one that's a pearl that you stick to your temple. But the idea is this little wrist thing, or you can clip it on your lapel, records everything. And sends it to an unnamed, I don't even know, it's B.computer. They don't even say, I don't think, what AI company they're using. I doubt it's their own. But sends everything that happens. It's recording everything, sends it up to the cloud, analyzes it, sends back notes. But in here, there's also a transcript. Not exactly. There's a transcript you can assign voices to. So I'm sure they're going to be clobbered as soon as somebody figures out they're doing that. And I'm completely willing. I'm doing it right now. I'm sending now it's not hearing you because I'm wearing headphones, but it's hearing me, and it will undoubtedly give me a synopsis of what we talked about on the show. So you couldn't use this, Alex, because you have to do stuff that You've got NDAs. I don't sign NDAs. That's
I
another
have so
good
many.
reason.
I have an NDA stacked on other NDAs that are interleaved with other NDAs.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think the potential here, I guess what I'm saying is if you're willing to give up your conception of privacy, and there's a lot more you can do with AI. And I think
so many things, and there's so many things other people can do with AI once you've given them.
Fine, I don't care. I'm getting so much out of this. I've only had it for a day. I just came yesterday, and I'm already very impressed. It takes notes. It actually makes a to-do list based on stuff. When you agree to do something, it actually adds it to your to-do list. You can, of course, delete it later. It summarizes your day. I was reading this before the show, so pardon me for repeating it. But let me just show you what a great day I had yesterday. For Alzheimer's patients, this would be amazing. I'm thinking for my mom who can't remember much. Let me show you. This is the interface. Good morning, Leo. This was yesterday. Daily memories. Passions and camaraderie shone brightly through animated debates and shared laughter, brimming with social interactions. We were watching the football game. It talks about what we talked about. It says, we made jokes about the medical ads. I think this is kind of interesting. I'm sure I approve of the florid prose. The overall mood of Leo's day was dynamic and lively, characterized by a blend of excitement from sports analysis, upbeat sharing of personal hobbies, and spirited discussion. There was an evident
when it goes bad. Like, does it tell you that? Like, does it tell you that you had a horrible day today? Like, I mean,
well, we'll see. That's a good question. That's a very good question. I mean, this was a good day because we were watching the Monday Night Football with Lisa and her son and her ex-husband. They don't mention that. And we had warm social ties, rich in camaraderie, underlining the strong bonds within Leo's person. I can't wait to have a bad day, and I will let you know what it says on a bad day. I also gave it. See, I really gave it up everything. I gave it my email. I gave it my calendar. I gave it everything, my whole Google, my contacts. This is emails. It's summarizing my emails. I haven't seen that yet. A late night visit from Stephanie. I don't know the woman. I don't. And chilly weather. It's a little confused on that. It says it's 18 degrees. I hope it's not going to be 18. Jason? This is a friendly chess match with Stephanie.
18 Celsius, maybe.
What did California do to God to make God so angry with California?
I just think this is so cool. But the point being this is cool. It's $50 and so far no subscription. I'm sure there will be a massive subscription or they'll go out of business. But this is the promise of AI down the road, right? And this is something Apple could do. In fact, I can use the Apple Watch's recorder with the B AI, they said. We'll see how quickly Apple turns that off. But I don't think it would be as good if it weren't connected to the outside world. I think this is the kind of the challenge that we're facing with AI. Apple can do it, but if it's all on device, I just don't think it's as rich and as useful.
Yeah, well, that's why I was so excited about NVIDIA's like $3,000 personal AI machine that they announced last week. They're shipping in May. The idea of having like a person, it maybe wasn't designed for the home, but eventually the idea of having like a personal AI server in the house, something that can run these enormous models that normally have to go into the cloud, so that you won't feel bad or sketchy about using it for financial advice, using it for like personal therapy, the sort of stuff that I would never allow this to leave the house and live on another server, let alone possibly be used to train other AI, possibly to be exploited by people who know, who have red teamed correctly this chatbot and know how to exfiltrate information out of it. It's not going to be easy to get those kind of huge scale models, the kinds that do the really good stuff, to work on device and give you the results that you want. However, I think for just like a lot of people are willing to spend $500, $1,000, $2,000 to have like a home storage server to do a whole bunch of things, I think a lot of people would be willing to spend that amount of money to have like the ultimate in secure and personal and private AI tools.
I wonder if that's what NVIDIA is thinking. I mean, I think they intend it more for researchers, right?
Yeah, to develop models that they can then deploy.
It's a really interesting idea, a supercomputer.
The idea
it's
of
still not as
democratizing
big.
AI,
By the way, it's only 200 billion tokens, I think. It's still not quite as big as, an external, but it's still pretty good.
Doesn't it feel like we're watching the computer industry repeat itself here, where I think Andy's exactly right, that right now, all these incredibly useful AIs are on huge servers that cost a lot of money and burn a lot of power and are in the cloud, and you have to send it data. And I think some people expect that it's going to stay like that, and it's like it's not. We have already learned that for so many reasons, and Apple's already learned this because they've got neural engines in everybody's pockets, and so they're trying to build small models that can run on device as well as their cloud models that they're trying to build. But like in the long run, I think this all points toward personal data that belongs to us and is analyzed on our devices by models that run on our devices. And devices get more powerful and the models get more efficient. And I feel like that is a direction that everything has to point, because it's so much more effective for your AI model to look at what, your personal data collection on your device, rather than say, well, okay, I guess I'll authorize all my personal data to some server that's provisioned somewhere in the cloud, and I hope that they don't hack my entire life. And if there's an AI Leo here next week, we'll know what happened.
Well, the cynic in me says that really the reason this whole thing is developing as fast as it is because there is so much money to be made by exfiltrating all your personal information to the cloud, and that's what's really driving OpenAI and everybody else. Not that you're going to pay for a service, but that they're going to be able to suck you dry for all your information.
And in addition, like if you have a conversation with any one person, like if you work alongside somebody, or if you had a personal assistant or for 5 or 6 or 7 years, at some point they know so much about how your work functions and what you need, what your priorities are, and what you mean when you grunt something instead of being really, really explicit about what you need. That is such a valuable set of training data about how to be a good assistant to Leo Laporte, that why should it belong to anybody other than you? Why should it not be an open corpus of data that you can then put on another box, upgrade to a different sort of AI?
But I still think that Apple, over time, again, I think Apple has more time than everyone else because their user base is moving. I mean, I'm constantly looking at different AI models for what I want to do, whether it's Anthropic for one thing and ChatGPT for another and Google, for something else. And I'm constantly optimizing. So they are in this kind of, pit match between each other, because people like me are like deciding which ones I'm subscribing to, and I'm turning subscriptions off on stuff I'm not using very often. And so as soon as I decide that this isn't as good as the other ones, I just get rid of it. And so they have to fight every single day over what that looks like. I'm doing all of this on my Apple devices, which I'm not planning to leave anytime soon. So I still think Apple has a lot of time to do this. And I do think, though, that as they continue to optimize the hardware so that it can process this better, it's going to be able to do more of that data. And then in this kind of secure area, it's going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And I think that some of the things we're talking about, this personalization, is not the hardest thing that AI has to figure out. Figuring out imaging and video and everything else, that's really hard stuff, and compared to figuring out how to optimize how to work with us, I don't think that that's nearly as complicated for an AI tool to do. And again, I think that, Apple, I'm going to guess, is spending billions a year on improving this model, as is everybody else. But I think that they are, they're going to continue to grow the stage 1 and stage 2 that are relatively secure, and stage 3, which right now I think is 80% of the solution, will become 10% of the solution over the next 5 or 10 years.
It's going to be very interesting times, no matter what. And I agree with you, Andy. If I could buy 3,000 is worth it. A server that I could run in my house that would give me all the capabilities. The problem is it's probably not, because one of the things that makes, for instance, Perplexity AI so good is that it's always connected to the internet. and it's always getting stuff from the internet. I guess my digit server could
That's
be.
fine.
I just think
What if you could just set up fence posts that says that, look,
Right.
the conversations that I have with you are private. If you want to go and Google something on my behalf, do it, but don't say it's because you want to talk to me about this. Yeah.
Right.
I think it's possible.
I just think that the processing power required as soon as you get out there, I don't think we could have something at home that would do it.
Well, what's powerful, and I've actually talked about this. By the way, AI has become such a focus that we've decided to make This Week in Google kind of retool it we're going to call it intelligent machines. It's not going to be just AI. It's going to be about intelligence and artificial intelligence and machines that are intelligent. This is clearly going to be the next big thing. I just really wonder how well Apple is going to be able to survive in this. But it is the case, we were talking about this on Wednesday on Twig, that there are a number of AI scientists who say, really, we got all the information now. Thank you for putting everything into the internet. Really, it's about better models and faster machines. And the Moore's law is very much the benefit. The AI is very much a beneficiary of Moore's law. So
I think that I don't know, like I'm doing all this AI stuff on my Apple computers. So I'm not sure when I'm going to decide, I have to leave Apple because some other computer is doing something. They're going to get faster and faster.
That's the point. They're going to have more memory and they're going to get faster.
But I'm saying, I'm using ChatGPT on my Mac. So I don't know when I go, Apple's fallen so far behind in AI that I have to leave them because I'm still using all these tools on my
but as soon as you use ChatGPT, all bets are off. You're now, regardless of what platform, you're now sending information to ChatGPT.
Right, but I think that I think Apple's got a lot of. All I'm saying is, if I'm using it, Apple's got a lot of time because everybody's giving away the advantage that Apple has is decades of privacy first development, in the sense that if they're able to continue to expand that over time, and again over years, not over the next couple months, that there is an advantage to where I would there's just a lot of things I won't ask ChatGPT or I won't go into or I won't whatever because of, from a security perspective, but I think that if Apple was, got good at those things over time, they have a huge advantage over everyone else who's just simply unable to provide that kind of security.
Oh, if it becomes a product, then it might not be quite such a big defining deal. Remember that both Google and Apple provide a lot of the same services. And a lot of people don't seem to mind that Google is an advertising company and make
but remember, Andy,
personal information. But
Google was kind of doing this. Remember those cards and the whole idea is we know you're at the airport, so here's your flight information, your travel information, and they kind of pulled back. I don't know why.
Well, all I meant is that if. Right now, we're at such a point of freedom for artificial intelligence because I think there was a recent study that said that something of Apple iPhone owners, they regard Apple Intelligence as important to them. I think the number of who answered yes to that question were like high teens. It was like a very low number.
That's what I
so there's still so if Apple thank God needs to make a whole bunch of mistakes over the next couple of years, they have the freedom to do that.
They've got the
because
space. Exactly.
I mean, but also eventually we're going to settle into a world in which people understand basically what AI is, just like there had to be a time for people to understand what word processing was, understand how it's relevant to them, even if in the first 2 or 3 years there weren't products or services that were relevant to what they do in any way, shape, or form.
Don't you think Apple is shaking in its boots just as Google is? That they're gonna that something like this is gonna come along and obviate the need for a smartphone. That there's gonna be, Google's terrified that search is, and they should be, going to be replaced by AI.
But I think Apple, again, because there's so many people with so much of their hardware, I think that their base is not going to move very quickly, one way or the other. It's a pretty solid base as far as people.
MySpace. I think people move.
MySpace was a web page, and that's easy to disrupt. I think that Google has more to worry about because they're primarily software.
Tell that.
Well, I see.
I feel to Palm.
I kind of feel like it's exactly the opposite, where Google is putting their chips on every single square in the roulette betting board, where whatever it is with AI, they've got a business there. Okay, they're not just giving you a better smart assistant on a phone. They're not just giving you like funny emoji. They are building world models that hopefully they hope AI developers of this year and 10 years from now are going to be relying upon, and creating the computing power that they will be needing to lease service from in order to run these models. If AI eventually comes into a topic that I've been coming back to so often, that again, if I just had all I need is one wireless Bluetooth earbud that can let me talk to my phone and have conversations, that's a lot more powerful than VR headsets for me or augmented reality.
I agree.
And so no matter what piece of hardware comes along, Google can create the AI for it, create a product or service for it, or again create the compute power that this third-party company is going to build it on. Apple, if people go away from phones, if they decide that it's the earbud, and it even doesn't really even matter like what earbud it is, so long as it's relatively good, they're the people who I think would be in trouble. Now, I don't think that that's going to happen anytime really soon. I do think that the phone is going to be the host for the AI for the foreseeable future, but you never know. There's so many things that nobody saw coming until it was the only rational thing that anybody could conclude. But I do think that Google is not as vulnerable as Apple on that specific scenario.
I think Google's almost out of the business, to be honest. I think Google's really looking laggard. I think both Apple and Google should really be worried that they are about to be kind of replaced, as happens always in technology. The next thing comes along. It's not such a big deal to go from an iPhone to an Android phone. Yeah. And the next time you buy a phone, it may not be an iPhone. And then what does Apple have?
Yeah,
I don't think the lock-in is as strong as you
I own a lot
think.
of both, and I would never use an Android on a day-to-day basis.
Android outsells Apple.
Yeah, it does, but I mean, when we look at the next generation, it doesn't. so it's. I mean, I think that's in the U.S., but that's a pretty big market. I don't know if it. I don't. But again, I don't know if the current market is really gonna. I don't know that many people that went from an. I mean, and I could be wrong, but I just don't know that many people that have gone from an iPhone to an Android.
I think complacency on Apple's part at this point would be a big mistake, and I bet you anything.
I don't think they're complacent.
Thinking very hard about what to do to stay relevant.
Well, I mean, what? Just look at the evidence of the last 6 months, where everything is Apple Intelligence. That is a sign of a company that got scared and got the message. Who knows if it's enough? But I would say that at least at a very bare level, you can't say that they seem
they recognize it. No, I agree.
They do recognize it. Now, they can succeed or fail, but they are not being complacent because Apple Intelligence, first off, it's forcing them to behave in ways that I would say are maybe even counter to ways that Apple's behaved. They're making mistakes and throwing things at the wall. And they're doing that because they feel an existential threat from the rise of AI technology, especially as embraced by their competitors, and they got to catch up. And that is, I mean, I think that says it all. Now, I think there is an interesting question about whether Apple's ways are so locked and have been so fixed for so long because they've been so successful, whether they can unlearn the details. Like,
it's always the question. It's the innovator's dilemma. It's the question for every company.
It's the corporate culture and how it all stacks up. And I was charged in my career at a print magazine with dragging the entire staff onto the web. Mm-hmm. And I would have meetings where everybody would agree that it was a good idea. And then it wouldn't happen. Like they would, because saying we're going to do this is not the same. Changing corporate culture is brutally hard. And I think that's the greatest risk for Apple, is not that they don't intellectually understand the importance that AI might have in changing the fortunes of the companies in this business. Not to say, again, I don't want to oversell AI. I think there's a lot of it that's overhyped, but there's a lot of it that will meet the hype as well. But like, that's the risk that Apple has, is not that they don't agree that it's important and they need to meet this moment, but that culturally they are using a culture built by Steve Jobs in a very different era, and they're too calcified. They're just too tied to how they, what got them here, which is to be very successful, but it might not be the rule book you need to follow going forward.
But I also think that
more pirates.
But I think that the upside is that when you look at how many people when they're asked, do you want to share my, asked to not share my information, the percentages, I don't remember what it was, but it's very high. The people just say, I don't want to share my information. And so the issue is that this kind of, as we get more intimate in our connection with AI and wanting to have something on all the time, like I would never put something on my body or anything else that gave something to someone other than Apple, that ongoing data. And the thing is that because I think Apple culturally, I think they consider privacy an existential problem for them, and I think that's a challenge for them in AI, but I think that also this device, then private enclave, then everything else approach, it's one of those things like, if you can pull it off, it's far superior for many users to do things with it that are much more connected to their everyday life than many of the other AI solutions. Now, the question is, can Apple pull it off? And it's going to cost billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars for them to do that. But they are, and if they do that, and as some of these other, models, are a little leaky, I think that as more of that stuff starts to come out, then I think that Apple is in a different position, than everyone else. But they have to pull it off. That's when I do an image playground image, then I go, maybe they can't do it.
I agree with you. If Apple could do it, if I could get all the benefits of this bee thing on my wrist,
but it's all
from Apple, I'd far prefer that. But
exactly, and that's Apple's opportunity.
Yeah.
The risk is that they don't move fast enough and they don't get that done. But their opportunity is something that is far superior from I'm willing to share all of my private data because, my health data and my other things and everything else.
And
it's
Kodak
trust, it's ecosystem connectivity, it's familiarity with the brand, all of these things, but they have to have the product, right?
Yeah.
But if
Kodak could have owned digital photography, could have owned it, but they didn't. It's the innovator's dilemma. It happens again and again and again.
It does, but existing companies are not precluded from adapting. We don't tell those stories, but they do. They can adapt, but sometimes they don't.
Usually the exception that proves the rule, though. I think. It's very
well. Somehow Microsoft has stayed in the top 5 for a long time.
Well,
they keep adapting.
That was smart. No, Microsoft
and Apple.
Was struggling, and Apple has done it too. They've done the transition, absolutely.
I will say one thing though. It's I think that regarding your comparison to the app tracking protection, I'm not sure if it's 100% comparable here, because the way that I would think of it is that if you ask somebody, would you prefer that? Here is a diner that you like. Or a restaurant that you like? Would you prefer that there are no vegetarian options, or rather, we'll get rid of the vegetarian stuff on the menu to make room for more non-vegetarian options? In abstract, I think most people might say yes, because most people aren't vegetarians and they're not looking at that place in the menu. However, if you put in front of them red beans and rice and quinoa and a really great vegetarian dish, and you ask them, would you like this to be on the menu? They might say yes.
I'll give you an example that's actually real, which is that if you ask people if they're if they watch PBS, far more people say they watch public broadcasting than actually do.
Yeah.
It's a poll question, and poll questions are a notoriously bad way to find out what people really think.
Maybe I introduced this the wrong way. What I'm getting at is that I think that people would much rather have more privacy than less privacy in the abstract. When you give them an exact example saying, here is what your calendar app can do for you if it collects no information about you. Here's what the calendar app can do about you if it is almost always aware of what's going on in your life. Do you feel that strongly about privacy then? I do think that people's desire for privacy is flexible if you give them something that it seems like a good trade.
Yeah, the equation that I often use is action will always occur when possibility is greater than circumstance. so it'll always occur. So if you view the possibility of getting something more than the circumstance of giving up your privacy or more work or whatever, you're always going to move forward. It depends on what that circumstance is. For some people, for a lot of people, if Apple was able to for most Apple users, if Apple gets within 10 or 15% of the quality of something else, they'll choose it, because so they'll just go down, they'll go that automatic path. I think that if it's but I'm using, for instance, lots of AI that I know is leaky. I'm conscious to what I'm putting into it, but I'm also asking lots of questions. I'm trying to learn how to use Airtable right now. So I sit there with ChatGPT open and I'm sitting there like, how do I do this? I want to create this kind of table. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And I'm asking it all these questions and I'm giving up whatever I'm giving. I'm probably not giving up very much there. But the point is that other than somebody knowing that I'm using Airtable all the time. The thing is that if Apple did that, I would use Apple to do that if it got within 10 or 15% of the quality. So Apple's advantage among their own users is they don't have to beat everyone. They just have to be within. They just have to be close. And an Apple user will tend to use the Apple resource. But if they're really far behind, Apple, lost a lot of ground because they didn't choose subscription for Apple Music until it was, way too late. If Apple had done subscriptions in 2009 or 2010, Spotify wouldn't exist. Like it would, and so they can fall further behind, and then but. I think that when all things are equal, Apple has an advantage, or even if Apple's a little behind on another innovation. But I think that there's, I think that if Apple can turn the corner, they have a huge advantage. If they can't turn the corner, well, they've got time to figure it out. I think that's all I'll say is that I'm not saying that, and they are obviously very focused on it. I mean, that's all they want to talk about. But it's not that they don't see it, but I still think that they have years, not months. And I think some of the other ones have months. Like if ChatGPT didn't perform as well, like I've decided that Claude is better than ChatGPT to do programming. I'm programming, playing around with building programs, writing programs in Xcode, but based on stuff I did with AI. And I started in ChatGPT, but moved over to Claude. And that happened in a series of weeks, so that's a much different situation for these AI tools.
It's not sticky. You will move away from Claude in a week if it doesn't do it.
If I found something else that does it, and that's the problem for the software-based ones or the cloud-based ones.
I think it's a problem for all of them.
It is, but I'm not leaving. But I'm not going. Oh, Apple Intelligence isn't close enough yet. I'm going to leave my phone. Like that's not like, so that happens over many years. So that's the curve that Apple has, is that there's a huge ecosystem. I have to make big decisions. I've got Apple TVs and speakers and computers and watches and iPads and everything else. Leaving that ecosystem that's really sticky. And I think that still gives Apple some time.
We got to take a break. I'm way behind, but I have one more provocative question. Do we have any information on how many homes are homogeneous? They're all Apple. And how many homes are heterogeneous? I'm guessing that just because you have an Apple phone doesn't mean you don't use Windows or have a Google TV. But I wonder, do we have any numbers? Has anybody ever done any research on this? I'd be very curious.
Yeah, I don't know.
The all Apple homes, I think, have to be in America.
Oh, there are very few, right? Just the sheer number of iPhones, especially in the U.S. And you look at Mac market share, and it's like it's not possible, right? I think
that's right.
You could even argue that maybe most iPhone users use Windows, right? Like just because of the numbers, it kind of has to be that way.
We know that because of the success of iTunes once it went out on Windows. I think that's still the case. So I think you're an outlier, Alex, is all I'm saying. Is I think that the people are much more comfortable with a heterogeneous system than you are in general. Anyway, we'll see. I mean, we're all going to see. I would also say, and this is a longer subject for another time, but the app tracking question notwithstanding, I'm not convinced Apple's more private than anything else. There was just a really interesting piece from Wired and 404 Media showing how many thousands, it's something like 4,000 apps are tracking your location because they're... And by the way, this information was then leaked in a hack file from a company called Gravy Analytics. It's the app developers don't even know that the location is being tracked. It's because they're using an advertising ecosystem that is tracking you. And if you look at the list of apps, it's everything. It's period tracking apps, pregnancy apps. It's game apps. It's huge. And this spreadsheet, which is available from 404 Media, goes into the, let's see, I'm at the bottom. No, I'm not yet. More than 5,000 different apps. You saw this, Andy. I can hear you.
Yeah,
agreeing.
exactly.
I mean, this is. I
was
think
reading
the notion that you are somehow magically protected because you're on Apple.
Yeah. It's good. It's just good to have that broad understanding. I value the fact that Apple has ways of exploiting me that don't involve exploiting my personal information, and that's one of many reasons why my desktops are all Macs. My iPad is a Mac. All that kind of stuff.
I use them because I like them.
Well,
that's really why people use them, right?
I value
they
it,
like
but people have to make sure that they understand that just because Apple goes the extra mile, and truly, this isn't just marketing hype. They do truly go the extra mile to make sure that if they can make something private without affecting their profits, they absolutely will. That doesn't mean that you're clean, you're pure, you're safe, because there's so many other organizations out there that are trying to track you.
People use Windows. And they know how bad Microsoft is, and they still use Windows in the vast majority.
And I know you need to get to commercial. All I'll say is that this is one of the reasons why I don't. It mitigates to me the argument against like using Google products and services. There are people who want to de-Google their phones, go to really extreme lengths to make sure that their phone is absolutely clean of any taint or influence of Google. That's perfectly up to them. I absolutely respect that decision. However, it's really, really hard to exchange oxygen for carbon dioxide on this planet without being tracked and without losing your privacy. So that's part of the matrix when you're making the decision, what companies do I want to deal with? What companies am I willing to trade my personal information for if they're giving me a better user experience for it?
Yeah. I got to take a break. It's a great conversation, which will never end. So that's the good news. We'll be back to it soon, I'm sure. And I think it's really fascinating to see what's going on with AI because it's moving fast, but it's also moving in unpredictable ways. Steve Gibson did an assessment of AI on last Tuesday on Security Now, and his conclusion is everything you thought about AI yesterday is different today, and it's going to be different tomorrow. We are in a giant disruption, the kind of disruption that happened with the internet, but it's happening in a much faster time frame. And I think incumbent companies are going to be challenged in general by what's going on. It's fascinating to me. And the fact that I'm willing to wear this thing that's recording everything I do all day, all night, and sending it to an unknown server in an unknown country just shows you how all in I am on AI, right? We got a great show. We got lots. We actually have Apple news we'll get to in just a moment with Andy Anako, Alex Lindsay, Jason Snell. Great to have you here on MacBreak Weekly. So this episode of MacBreak Weekly brought to you by Delete Me. Actually, it's very appropriate to our privacy discussion because unfortunately, we just were talking about those apps that leaked your location information and put it on the open market. If you've ever searched for your name online, perhaps, and I don't recommend it, you've seen how much of your personal information is out there. Maintaining privacy is not just a personal concern, it's a family affair. It's a corporate affair. We, use Delete Me as a business, and I think every business should have Delete Me for their managers because all that information opens you up to spear phishing attacks. Your family needs to be protected. With Delete Me's family plans, you can ensure everyone in the family feels safe online. How does Delete Me work? It reduces risk from identity theft, from cybersecurity threats, from harassments, and more. By going out, they're experts, and they are really experts in this data broker industry. They will go out and they will find and remove your information from hundreds of data brokers. I was shocked. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is considering making it illegal to sell your social security number. But right now, it's legal for a data broker to collect your social and sell it on to anybody, the highest bidder. With Delete Me, you get that data off of their servers. That's the only way to prevent them from selling it. And for your family plan, you can assign a unique data sheet to each family member that's tailored to them because, some people, want to use Instagram, some don't. With easy-to-use controls, account owners manage privacy settings for the whole family. So what they do, they go out, they delete that information, but then this is very important because there's always new data brokers coming along. They will continue to scan and remove your information regularly. And I'm talking everything, not just socials, addresses, photos, emails, relatives, phone numbers, your social media, your property value, and more. There are no secrets on the internet unless you're proactive enough to delete it. Protect yourself. Reclaim your privacy. Visit joindeleteme.com/twit. We did this for Lisa when people were impersonating her, spearphishing our employees because they could find her phone number and all her other information and who reports to her and all of that stuff. It's amazing what's out there. You got to get it off the internet. Joindeleteme.com/twit. Do use the offer code TWIT, if you will. That'll get you 20% off. Joindeleteme.com/twit. The offer code TWIT will get you 20% off. So remember that too. We thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly. Joindeleteme.com/twit. We've lost all but you, Andy. So it's just you and me right now. Okay, everybody else has gone to the bathroom, I think.
What are you dreaming about, Leo?
What are you talking about?
I have thoughts. I don't know. Let me ask my little AI pal. Maybe it knows what's going on in the real world. Actually, there is real Apple news. Not a lot of it. There is a question though. I have. Apple did say that they were going to release the new CarPlay in 2024. Let me check a calendar. They didn't. So I'm guessing that this doesn't have much to do with Apple's ambitions, but the automakers, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because this requires integration on the automaker side. So it's not Apple releases a software update and then they've got CarPlay. It's this bespoke partnership that they sort of wanted to enter into with car makers, and the car makers are less interested in that.
Yeah. Perhaps with the help of Apple, Aaron Paris has leaked on X.com an upcoming look at widgets in this so far unreleased CarPlay 2.0. There's a little add widgets screen. You can add, I like that. I think that'd look nice on my car's dashboard, but of course I'm never going to see it because automakers.
I don't think that the hard part is the automakers are not very good at building these interfaces, but they don't want to be disintermediated either.
Right.
Because I finally upgraded my old car with a new screen, and it's as good as far as I'm concerned. It works as well as a new car.
Yeah.
I've got all the Apple features on it. I don't feel like my car no longer feels as old as it did 2 weeks ago or whatever. And,
I love CarPlay. I wouldn't buy a car without CarPlay, but
100%. Like I would not. There's no way. It's like too tied into what I'm doing.
You point out the manufacturers are doing everything they can without actually getting rid of CarPlay, although GM did get rid of CarPlay. But I have a BMW, and it's it's got CarPlay, but that's not the preferred screen.
Right.
And they have their own widgets, and they have their own apps, and they have all this other stuff, and it feels like it's redundant since I just want to use CarPlay, but they want to make sure they gather the data that CarPlay could gather. I guess I don't know.
More data.
I think it's about data,
and Apple,
isn't it?
And Apple users going, hey, I would love to just have it all inside of this little bubble,
right?
And
be my phone. Yeah.
I mean, but for me, I have to admit, it's not data. It's just that the interface, I'm used to the interface. It looks the same everywhere I go, no matter what car I'm tied into. And it has all the stuff that I want it to have. My playlists and my maps and everything else. And I don't feel like trying to figure out how to. I think that's the big thing that I still think that Apple users, not all of them, but I think a majority of Apple users, they just want it to work. They don't need it to be perfect. They don't need it to be the best thing ever or the coolest thing ever. They just don't want to think about it. Like I just want it to work. I just want to turn it on and have it do the thing. And I think that CarPlay does that exceptionally well.
Something that probably won't come out in 2025, Vision Pro 2, at least according to Mark.
I don't think anybody ever expected it to come out in 2025.
Right. I did see a story that said Apple actually sold a lot of Vision Pros later in the cycle. That they, I don't know. I think that there was a goal to sell. I mean, I think that before we did it, everyone was like, they're not going to sell more than 500,000. And then they sold about they sold about what they, and then the next ring that most of the rumors had was sometime in 2026 there'll be a higher level version and a lower level version than what we have right now. The one we have right now is the middle. That was the rumor 2 years ago. And now they're acting like, whoa, Apple's now working on a lower cost one. Yeah, they are working on a lower cost one. They've been working on it for probably a little while, since before they released the product. They knew that $3,500 or $4,500 or $5,000 when it's all done is going to be too much. This is the state of the art of what they could do within that price range. I still think that either at the same price or a price higher, they're going to have one that's a higher performance version, and then they're going to have a lower. And we all
everybody knew. I mean, I don't know. Just about everybody knew there was going to be a lower cost version. It's probably under sub 2,000.
I didn't play the Vision Pro theme because I thought this probably doesn't merit a theme.
That's fair.
There's really nothing else to say. Is there?
We don't want to devalue the Vision Pro theme. It's such a good theme.
But that was the Vision Pro segment, such as it is.
And that's speaking as someone who gets $27.30 every time that music is played because I'm the composer.
Oh, that's right. Well, you wrote the lyrics, so there's a. Did you write the music too?
Well, I did. I
There's
did
the
a
writer
sort of,
and then there's mechanical rights.
You know how Gene Roddenberry wrote some BS lyrics to the Star Trek theme just so he could have half the royalties from the.
Yeah.
I thought he was a smart guy. People think the world of him. Why can't I get a piece of that pie?
Well, I guess we're in the Gurman section of the show, and since I do pay now for access to Mark's newsletter, I guess we should do the Gurman section of the show. These days, though,
Sounds like we need we're going to need a theme for that one.
Gurman.
Gurman, where are you? Who are you? Where are you, Gurman?
Wait a minute, I'm off to Suno.ai. If you give me some lyrics, I'll.
Man of the future, Gurman, he'll got the suture.
Mark Gurman.
What'll we buy? What'll we
He's
find? Who
not
knows?
German.
Mark Gurman.
But he's in the know. It's the Mark Gurman Show. Okay, let's see. I'll just have Suno generate a little something. What style of music would that be? Maybe jazz? Jazz vocals?
It should be like the theme song from Bewitched.
So TV theme song, yeah.
Oh, TV theme song. I like it. All right. Suno A. By the way, this is the version 4 of Suno AI, which is kind of amazingly good. I've been playing with it as usual, and I cannot stop. So this song is now titled "Oh Mark Gurman." Mark, this one is going out to you. It's a little request. Let's see if I can get it to play.
Walking down a dirt road with a fishing pole over his
German. He's not German, but he's in the know. It's Mark Gurman Show.
That's pretty good. Makes you want to watch, doesn't it?
I know there's a montage of the supporting characters.
Jason is just embarrassed for all of us. Like he's just like,
He's not German is a very bad rhyme.
He's in the know.
We're all squirmin'.
Okay, I'll change it to "We're all squirming" with that
No,
stupid.
I'm making fun of you.
I intentionally write bad lyrics because it makes it fun. It makes it fun. All right, that's the Mark Gurman segment. Here we go.
Great.
Apple plans 20 new products in 2025. Yes,
not new set categories, just new products. Like they're
new
just going to
products.
upgrade a bunch of things.
iPhone, and there's going to be a iPhone Slim, a smart home push, new AI features.
Well, I think that the smart home thing we've talked about. I think Apple will not be successful until they build the core themselves. And I think it sounds like they're going that way.
But it also sounds like it's taken longer than we thought. I don't know.
It's hard.
It's hard.
I think
this
that
stuff's hard.
I think that Apple really thought that they could somehow build with enough integration, with enough talking. But the home automation market is just such a mess. Like with so many different formats and so many different standards and so many different ways of doing things, and everybody wants to hang on to their little island of what they're doing. And I think that it was never going to work until Apple. I think Apple really didn't want to stick their nose into it, because the problem is there's the Sherlock factor, which is as soon as Apple builds something, they kill that market. Like it's going to be like the users are just going to go to that, and if the company that makes doorbells and a whole bunch of other things, if Apple builds the doorbell thing, we'll just stop trying to integrate with Apple. Because the Apple's just going to roll into that market. And so if they do, I think the concern on their end was if they do too much of that, they end up with having to build everything that you're going to use. But I think that if they build the core, most of their users will be happy and be using a lot more home automation and probably be a better market. But I think eventually they're going to stop using Material or whatever the next thing is. There's going to be some Apple Matter and they're just gonna.
No, I don't. Boy, if that it seems like that would be a mistake. But
no, I think if they're successful, if the doorbell is successful,
right,
it's going to be an Apple integration. They're going to stop they're going to stop trying to play with others, because the bottom line is Apple is not good at playing with others. Like, that is not what they have a lot of great skills, but integration with other people is not one of them.
So you might be
Matter's and I think that they thought that Matter was going to work. Everyone thought that Matter was going to work. It's been a disaster. Yeah. And so I think that Apple may just say, hey, here's how you talk to our devices. And here's how you talk to our computers and our phones.
Gurman says Apple's been planning to introduce the Home Hub in March, but it may take longer to reach consumers. The new operating system, codenamed Pebble,
good times.
I want an operating system named Bam Bam, is heavily tied to the app intense features coming in iOS 18.4 and 19. So he says it's plausible the hardware itself will ship a bit later. 19 won't be out till September.
Yeah, this is that last feature that is sort of really intriguing. The app intense as well as the personal data store that can be mined, and those are the ones that are the most promising, and also the ones that are going to ship the latest because they're the hardest to implement.
What do they do?
It sounds very much like they went all in on like app intense as a way to drive this product, and then they're not ready, so you can't ship the product.
Describe what an app intent is. I mean, I know when you have an app.
It's all
and
the
you
stuff
write
that you
an app
can
in
control.
Xcode, you say, I need a camera, so I'm going to have an app intent for camera access.
No. So this is different. This is not the permission stuff that an app gets. This is what can an app do that is exposed to, if you want to think of it as a scripting interface, it's actually like if you use shortcuts, all of that stuff is basically app intents. An app contributes like, here are the things that you can tell this app to do. And it can contribute that to the system. And it can contribute that to Siri, and it can contribute that to shortcuts. And the idea, and they really evangelized this at WWDC last year, is that developers need to be building on this. Hint, hint. Like, the idea is that this is going to be a huge way that they're going to drive the platform forward. So you need to atomize your apps, basically, and say, all right, here's my app. It does. You can tell it to do 15 different things, and it'll do them. And then
Isn't
it integrates
this what we
those.
did back in the day with AppleScript?
Yeah, this is the next step of what was, in the last generation was AppleScript, which is how do you make a scriptable app? Well, in iOS and modern macOS, you use app intents to make a controllable app using app intents, and then the system will, whether it's shortcuts or Siri or Apple Intelligence, will tell your apps what to do. And the dream is you'll say, hey, Shlomo, do a thing. And it knows that it can do that thing by using this app to do that part and then passing it to this app to do this other part. Solved, right? It's going to use your apps to do what you want. And that's a great idea. But, that's where they're headed. And so it is sort of a replacement for, I can't tell my app to do this very specific thing that I could back in the AppleScript days. That's what they're trying to evangelize here.
That was such promise with AppleScript, and except for a few narrow niches, it just really didn't do what I thought it would do. I was hoping every app on the Mac would be scriptable.
There was a time when almost every app on the Mac was scriptable, but it passed pretty quickly. And, at least they were considering not bringing it to OS 10 at all.
Huge in pre-press. They can't.
Yeah, that's why they kept it. That's why they kept it in the OS 10 transition, is that all of the people who were doing publishing used it for their workflows.
I used it really heavily to like the amount of data that we took, tying FileMaker to Quark, and other data. Like we would be, all the classified ads I was working on a magazine. All the classified ads, all the displays, everything else was all driven from a database that was feeding in, and that was all AppleScript using it to tie those things together, and it was so key.
And when I still use AppleScript, it's mostly for the fact that shortcuts or other things won't let you get that granular control over doing a specific feature in an app. And if AppleScript is going to fade into the distance, then something needs to let you do that. What is that? Right. And app intents, I think, is the answer.
Yeah, it's a really big deal with AI, because the ability to the thing that's going to hook a lot of people is agentive. I hate to use the buzzword, but agentive AI, where you can say things like, take this Omni Outliner doc and turn it into a Google Workspace spreadsheet and format it with A, B, and C. And for it to be able to control Google, control Safari, control Omni Outliner, and apply everything you want to do. I mean, we're talking about AppleScript because I just wrote AppleScript yesterday to essentially reformat some stuff from Omni Outliner into a spreadsheet. And I went there after spending like an entire afternoon trying and failing to get Google Gemini and ChatGPT to do this really, really simple thing that I thought would be, why am I even bothering to do a BB edit, search and replace? I can just simply say, hey, here's a file. I want it to be reformatted like this. No. And
Did you know that there's actually one of the great ways to generate AppleScript now is to use an LLM? They're actually pretty good at writing.
That was the ironic thing. I should have started with AppleScript, but as usual, I should have just basically asked, hey, I need a routine that does this. Boom. Okay, that's a little bit wrong, but I can fix it. Thank you.
Yeah, I used AppleScript this week too, because I had to script something very specific that I couldn't use just command line or Python or shortcuts for. And so I went to AppleScript. That's why Apple has not replaced AppleScript yet, because you would lose lots of functionality in controlling apps. But I think Intense is where they're going. By the way, this is probably as good a time as any to mention, because I don't think we mentioned it before, that Script Debugger, which has been around for 30 years, is being retired. And the developers, I wrote about this week, the developers are retiring, which again, like,
because they're old.
I can't, because this has been around a long time, right? Like, so they should retire. I'm not going to complain about that. It's just one of those things where it is a classic indie Mac app that has been around forever. But the problem is, if it's only a couple of people working on it and they're going to retire, that's the end of that app. The truth is, if AppleScript was still like the number one priority of Apple, they'd sell it. But it's not. It's fading away. The problem is, it hasn't faded away yet, in part because it hasn't been replaced. And the fact that Andy and I sometimes still resort to AppleScript, and that I'm starting to tell people, just ask ChatGPT to write you an AppleScript to do this thing. It's so dumb, but like, until app intents are, and evangelism is the point. Leo, what you said about how I really wish more apps were Apple scriptable back in the day, goes for app intents too, right? Because that's why Apple, to their credit,
that's why I brought it up.
They're really evangelizing this, but like, if
they evangelized AppleScript,
the developers have to do this. The problem is, if you're a developer and you hear Apple say, okay, here's our plan. We're going to make it so people don't need to use your apps anymore. They'll use them, but it'll just be our AI driving them, and they won't actually have to use them anymore. If you're a developer, do you like that? I'm not sure you do, but I'm not sure what your alternative is, because the platform owner is telling you to do it, so maybe you ought to do it. But we'll see what happens.
Several editions of Script Debugger.
It's
late
so
night software.
It's so good.
It's a great product. I'm sad that they're going out of business, but not out of business. They're retiring. So
yeah.
By the way, it's weird that you guys both did something with AppleScript, because I did too. I launched Automator so that I could write a quick action, so that I could have Emacs open text files if I right-click on it and have a quick action. And that just shows you there's little weird niche uses for it.
You can do most of that quick action stuff in shortcuts now, but I still have some stuff that's based in Automator that uses some AppleScript at a few points. And actually, I've got one that's huge. It's probably the most complex thing I've ever done, and I have to keep it in Automator for now, at least for expediency's sake, because an Automator action, you can like put command line utilities inside the package and then hand it to a friend and say, just use this. And shortcuts, that would be a horrendous security hole for me to give software to people. So I still use Automator for some of that. But they're slowly, the truth is, Apple is slowly replacing all that stuff with a new version that is going to be the way forward. There's a reason when they announced shortcuts that they said it's the beginning of a multi-year process, multi-year transition. Multi is a great word because it could mean 1 or 2 or 5 or 20 or 50 or infinity, and it's fine. It's just a lot of years, more than one.
And since we mentioned Automator, we should probably mention that Sal Seguin, who was the king of AppleScript, the king of Automator. In fact, I think one of the first guests on MacBreak, Alex, way back in the day. We did a bunch of shows.
One of the first guys. He was in the first record. He was not only was Sal the first. He was in the first day we recorded, which we recorded like 25 episodes or something. I think we got 4 or 5 from Sal. He was also the first time we ever tried to do a 4K upload. When YouTube allowed 4K, Sal came in. I was like, we're going to do it in 4K.
Yeah.
And then it took us 3 weeks to.
That's the one. He is still around. He works for the Omni Group. In fact, he just has put out a series of Omni automation vids. You were mentioning OmniFocus. It's a podcast from Auto Automator, which is Sal.
That's Sal.
And it's also on the Omni Group webpage.
Yeah,
so there you go.
What Sal's been doing a lot of lately is I mean, first off, every now and then I get an email where I've talked about, Apple should really do this thing with Siri. And he'll say, that's what we told them, 20 years ago. And they said, no, they weren't interested. Yeah. And now they've gotten there because he was really absolutely ahead of his time. And there was a period where they just stopped listening to him. They didn't, the people in charge at Apple just didn't want to. But once he left Apple, one of the things that happened very quickly is that Omni Group approached him, and all their app scripting is not in AppIntense or AppleScript, it's in JavaScript. And they built a robust JavaScript-based scripting system so that you can script all the stuff that's going on.
That was kind of smart.
And that's fine. I use Audio Hijack scripting to do a lot of stuff, and it's JavaScript based. And there are like shortcuts that say run this script or run this code, and that's good enough. It's close enough. Like it doesn't all have to be necessarily in the same format as long as you can control an app and tell it what to do. But that's what a lot of what's missing in the shortcuts era right now.
Yeah.
So just to follow up on Late Night Software, the end of development is this month. They are going to withdraw the product in June, but they will offer a free download of Script Debugger, which is kind of nice, and their forum will continue to operate.
Yeah,
so
they're going to put all the versions, like the last many versions, up with serial numbers in mid-year. So if you're somebody who has, basically for retro computing, if you've got an old system that relies on this, or I think in the future somebody is running an emulated Mac from a particular period, they could get it up and running, and that's cool. I mean, they can't open source it, but they can make their binaries available with serial numbers. That's pretty great.
Yeah, they say there's too much encumbered stuff in there. They can't release it. Mark Aldrich and Shane Stanley, enjoy your retirement. I'm actually thrilled that they were able to, make a living for so long selling out what was an excellent product.
I do fear all of these classic Mac indie software groups that are potentially, full of people who are approaching a retirement age. I guess the upside is a lot of its most loyal users are also approaching retirement age, but I just don't.
Many of the podcasters who cover
I don't like it.
Are reaching retirement.
I never want to reach that day where Rich Siegel says, I don't need to do BB Edit anymore. I'm just going to go fishing.
Yikes.
Don't want that.
Day's probably long ago, but he hasn't done it yet.
He's got a backup plan. He's fixing
mixers. He's going to open a KitchenAid mixer stand somewhere in Rhode Island.
He's fixing. His hobby is fixing KitchenAid mixers. I'm not just talking about replacing the plug. We're talking about he's a car nut, and he basically strips it all the way down, takes all the gears down.
I'm going to send him mine. I've had mine for 40 years.
This plastic gear can be replaced with a bronze one. I'm going to rehack the.
I love my.
I've done two. I did mine. My KitchenAid mixer was my mom's. And so all the cookies I had as a kid, I used Rich's advice. I replaced a couple of gaskets and re-lubricated it because it probably hadn't been lubricated in 40 years or 50 years.
Ever.
And then one day, a couple of years ago, I was running in my neighborhood and there was a KitchenAid mixer by the side of the road. And I was like, oh boy. And so I got it and I said, Rich, he said, bless you for being a good person. And then we rehabbed it and now it's in my closet here. I got probably one of my kids will end up with it. But I got it back to working condition. So Rich does that as his hobby. It's pretty hilarious.
That's hysterical. I might have to write him and send him mine. On to the Mark Gurman, continued with the Mark Gurman segment, that we really went far afield on that one. He did say, which will be a little disappointment to some people, that there will be new iPads, but there are a number of things that will not come out this year. A revamped Siri for ChatGPT due in the spring of next year, more than a year from now. Also, an in-home privacy-centric security camera, a Face ID-driven doorbell. He says 2026. So what is available in 2025? A Mac Studio refresh. I think we knew all of this, right?
Which is going to be a beast. I mean,
it'll be great.
Mac Mini,
an M4
Mac Mini does. I mean, I'm doing a bunch of stuff with the Mac Mini M4
I love
right now.
my Mini.
I have the $599 version. I am streaming 120 frames a second out of the HDMI and is running at 6%. 6% utilization. That's with OBS like running 120 frames a second out, pushing something out. And it's like, I don't know if I should go to sleep or
he says it'll have M4 Max, M4 Ultra chips, iOS 19, 6 months away, of course. There'll be an 18.4 update with new Apple Intelligence features in the next few months. I think we're in beta now, right, Jason, for 18.4?
No, 18.3 is beta right now.
Okay.
18.4 is yet to be seen, and there's very little in 18.3, which it may just be a bug fix update with minor things, and we'll have to wait for 0.4, which will be much later.
And an updated Apple Watch, which we were talking about, including, we presume, the Ultra 3. Apple's planning a revamped coaching health app. We kind of mentioned that already. iPhone 17, Pro Max, and an Air or Slim, some sort of Slim. 2 millimeters slimmer, isn't that slim?
There's also the 11th generation iPad, which in the government report was really interesting because the suggestion is that it's going to support Apple Intelligence, which is a really good sign that if they're really going all in, that look, if this is any new Apple hardware that we're releasing from now on has to support Apple Intelligence. I don't care if it is the riffraff end of the range, we're going to have to make sure that it runs Apple Intelligence.
He says, don't expect too many changes in the MacBook Pro later this year. He says he does expect the M5 versions will continue with that 2021 design, but that's because next year's the 20th anniversary of the MacBook Pro, and he says there'll be a bigger revamp next year. New Mac Pro in development, high-end Hydra chip. Is that when they combine two M4s or two M5s to make one giant thing? He says the machine is on track to be ready before the MacBook Pro, although the timing isn't yet clear. I wonder how many people are buying Mac Pros these days. There's less and less reason to do it.
Nobody.
New AirTag already nearing production. New HomePod Mini. Apple TV planned for release later in the year. The Apple TV doesn't really need to be updated, but I have there throughout the house. I love every TV has an Apple TV. It's all I need now. Everything's over the top.
I just wish they'd upgrade the controller to the old one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still use the old controller with the new TV because there's like features in YouTube TV, for instance, that you can't get to from the new controller that you can from the old one.
Right.
So that's them.
So that is the Mark Gurman segment with its own Mark Gurman theme. We thank Mark for allowing us to use his name in vain. Here, I wrote new lyrics.
Hey, Mark Gurman, give us your tech sermon. What's cooking in the Apple room? Tell us what's coming soon.
Actually, this is Paul Holder's lyrics. Don't like that? I got another one here.
That was better.
This is like Saturday Night Live's thing. What are you doing, Andy? Are you dancing?
I'm not dancing to that to music that. See, I'm not throwing shapes to things that are designed for someone who's 30 years younger than I. That would be foolish.
Okay, thanh you very much.
I thought I'd do an OK Go sort of thing where when you speed it up, you get the actual.
That's the key. You just need a little one of those things. What do they call those things? Treadmill. You just need that. That's all you need. A treadmill. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Not the first time someone's told me that.
Actually, Jason has a very nice article. Did you write that on Treadmill Desk?
Well, that was Lex Friedman.
Lex did that. Okay. He's apparently decided that he wants to move all the time.
Yeah, he wrote the whole article at like 1.5 miles per hour.
Something to be proud of. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This episode of MacBreak Weekly brought to you by Bitwarden, the trusted leader in passwords, not just passwords, in secrets and in passkey management. In today's digital landscape. By the way, I think everybody watching by now knows that's the password manager I recommend and use. That's the one Steve Gibson recommends and uses for individuals, but it's for business too. And I think sometimes when you say it's an open source product, people go, "Oh, that's probably just not for business." Oh no, Bitwarden's very focused on enterprise. In today's digital landscape, protecting your organization is more critical than ever, and Bitwarden has stepped up to the challenge with powerful new features designed to simplify and fortify your password management strategy. They just expanded their Teams plan. They have a Teams plan and an enterprise plan with a robust SCIM that's a system for cross-domain identity management user provisioning. Well, what does that do? In a nutshell, it allows organizations and actually MSPs as well, if you're supporting some company that use or companies that use Bitwarden, to streamline access control with ease by integrating seamlessly with leading IDPs like Azure Active Directory or Okta or OneLogin or JumpCloud. Bitwarden delivers enterprise-level security capacities that work for all businesses of all sizes. There's more. That's not all. Bitwarden's also, you may have noticed if you're a Bitwarden user, redesigned its password manager browser extension. I think it's pretty. It's more intuitive. It's more efficient, and it is faster. It's a modern, faster interface with better navigation, clearer organization, smoother workflows. That's great for everybody who uses Bitwarden, both individuals and businesses managing their passwords across platforms. And with Bitwarden, it's security, yes, but there's no point in having a password manager that's hard to use. Bitwarden makes it easy. Setup is a few minutes. They support importing from most password management solutions. And I do think it's really important to say it's open source, it's GPL. The value of that is you can inspect the code, but also experts inspect the code. Bitwarden pays annually for third-party audits, and they publish the full results of those audits. So you can know that this password manager does exactly what it says it does. It's using real, good, strong encryption with no security flaws. You need that. Your business deserves a cost-effective solution for enhanced online security. Everybody should be using Bitwarden. If you're a business, get started today with Bitwarden's free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan. As an individual, and I know you're already all using a password manager, right? But friends and family who aren't, and I know you've been trying to get them just tell them this is free forever. All devices, iOS, Mac, Android, Windows, Linux. It's also works with passkeys. It supports secure notes. All my documents are, my passport, my driver's license, stored in Bitwarden because I know it's secure. Free forever for individuals. I think that's a great, important thing to know so you can tell your family and your friends. Just use this, okay? It's easy, it's fast, and it's free. Bitwarden.com/twit. Try the enterprise or Teams plan in your business too. Really good. Bitwarden.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly. And by the way, you can support MacBreak Weekly by very simply by going to that address. That way they know you saw it here. Bitwarden.com/twit. I'm glad we could mention Sal's new videos. I got an email just Christmas, early December, I think, from Naomi Pierce, his fine friend.
Yeah. Sal's a legend.
Yeah, Sal, and I love Naomi. I love the two of them. Been on many, as you have too, I think, many geek cruises with them.
Oh, yeah. No, I've been to their house. It's hung up. It's one I haven't been to San Francisco in a while, but there used to be like one of my regular San Francisco hangs.
He's like Zorba the Greek, right?
He's basically amazing. Yeah. Again, look at his energy, his style, his positivity, his hat, and his ability, and his just we forgot to mention that one of the reasons why AppleScript actually made it into OS 10 is because there's the legend that Steve Jobs came back, took control of everything, had a big company meeting inside the town hall, 150, 160 people, in which he went person to person, berating them, all these product managers for making terrible, crappy products that they should be ashamed of, that's bringing the entire company down, and we should cancel this. And people just sort of hanging their heads in shame, or trying to not have the courage to. And Sal just basically comes back with, "You're crazy. You're totally wrong. You don't understand AppleScript. If that's what." And after back and forth, the story goes. Then Steve just pauses, looks at him, says, "Okay," and then moves to the next guy.
So I have a related story, which is they were doing an OS 10 press conference, essentially, right? So they invited us down to it must have been Infinite Loop in the town hall. It's got to be where it was. And it was during that rollout of OS 10. So it might have been developer preview. It might have been post 25 years ago, or just a little bit longer than 25 years ago. But it was one of these, we're rolling out our OS 10 strategy. And it was back in the day where they took questions from the audience afterward, from the press, because it's just the press who are there. And I stood up and said to Steve Jobs, a lot of your professional publishing customers rely on AppleScript. Are you going to support AppleScript in OS 10? Because they had been real squirrely about it. Mm-hmm. And Jobs paused for a moment, and then he said, of course. In a way that felt to me at the time a little like he was making it up on the spot. I have it on good authority that you could literally cut to offices where AppleScript people work. Somebody bursts in the doors and says, did you hear? Steve said, of course. He said, of course. They weren't entirely sure it was going to get into OS 10. But then I asked him the question and he said, yes. I'm not saying that I saved AppleScript, but I'm saying I did put Steve Jobs on the spot and made him defend AppleScript.
And at the same time, he did. Steve Jobs did once, give him a little bit of applause from the stage during a keynote, and said, "Yeah, there's good old Saul."
Saul, who y'all know. That was when Sal unveiled Automator. He couldn't pronounce Segovian, so he just said, "Here's Saul, who y'all know."
I don't know how to say his last name
or his first name, as it turns out. It was Saul, who y'all know. I still every now and then I hear from Sal, and I'm like, "Oh, who y'all know? Y'all know.
Y'all know."
It's a classic moment. Anyway, that was my one chance to put Steve Jobs right on his heels a little, and it was, if it helped at all in making him feel like there was pressure for them to keep AppleScript, great, because
unafraid
it was
to make powerful enemies.
I would argue that if they, I know I ranted about this a little bit last week, but that OS 10 transition, if they had done enough things wrong, they would have just been abandoned and their customers would have gone to Windows. So AppleScript was one of those technologies that's I don't even know if in the long run they really even needed to keep it, but in that moment they had to keep it, because if we're going to break the workflow of every newspaper and magazine that's built these AppleScript workflows, if we're going to break it when they go to OS 10, they'll just go to Windows at that point, right? What are we even doing here? Why are you not maintaining continuity? So it's good that they did it.
Those are the days.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. So Apple got a little subtweet, little shade from Mr. Zuckerberg on the Joe Rogan show. He said they haven't invented anything great in a while.
Man who never invented anything
ever in his life.
They never invented anything.
What did they invent?
I
invented
Facebook
no
invent?
legs, he says. I invented...
Yeah. What did Facebook invent? What did Facebook invent? They did a knockoff of Are You Hot or Not?
Right.
That turned into the
Product
Facebook,
one.
Which turned into Facebook. They bought Instagram. They knock off everything.
WhatsApp. Yeah.
Yeah, they bought WhatsApp, and then they're famous for knocking off other people's features and implementing them. Come on, man.
Apple is sitting on the iPhone. He says Apple's used the iPhone to put in place a lot of rules I think or feel arbitrary.
It just really felt like he's just really bitter. He doesn't have control of something he wants to have control of, and he's mad about it.
He's really mad about app tracking transparency, obviously.
He was also throwing shade at Apple, basically. The Apple, their lack of innovation is reflected in the fact that their market share is going down. The iPhone, their sales are going down in the iPhone.
He's making things up. But we live in
some good, but he shouldn't have said those
Don't forget
things,
the Quest 3 is way better than the Vision Pro, which is only true in terms of value, because it's so much. It's also way cheaper than the Vision Pro.
But he does make some interesting points. He says, for instance, we don't have the same ability to do with the Meta Ray-Bans on the iPhone what Apple does with the AirPods.
He's right.
That's fair.
Terrible feeling when the worst person in the world says something you actually agree with.
Yeah, we talked about that a few weeks ago. That's actually one of the things that the EU is going after Apple for. But they're not saying you can't make Apple Watches anymore, but they're saying you have to explain why it is that there are protocol. There's a level of intimacy between Apple branded earbuds an Apple branded smartwatches that you are not willing to give the same advantages to third parties. And yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I'm a little bit more inclined to stay on Android for the near future, because I do feel like sometime in the next 2 or 3 years, I'm going to be buying a pair of smart glasses or some sort of AI enhancement device that is yet to be really designed that I don't know about. And I feel as though that thing is never, ever, ever going to work with Apple the way that it can work with Android. And I'll be stuck with wait until Apple decides to make one a knockoff, or not a knockoff, a version of an improved version, the right version of that, and see if I can afford it when they do.
And of course, Meta killed their diversion, equity, and inclusion programs. And probably Mark thinks that's a bad thing that Apple does. The Apple board has actually recommended that shareholders vote against a proposal to eliminate DEI programs.
I have to.
I
stand
they also
strongly.
wanted them to stop their environmental efforts. They also don't make enough profit.
Here's I actually have a list here because they released their proxy document for their shareholder meeting in February 25th next month, and there are 4 shareholder proposals. Many of them are really deeply politically motivated.
Are they all from the National Center for Public Policy, or they're from different?
No, I think they're from, a couple of are different. But you can tell the ones theirs kind of stand out. Report on ethical AI data acquisition and usage, which is something we've discussed before, where it's like, yeah, you said that. How does you having a deal with OpenAI match in with your pledges and that sort of thing? But yeah, then number 5, which is probably related to that class action lawsuits is spinning up. Report on the costs. The shareholders asking for a report on the costs and benefits of child sex abuse material identifying software and user privacy. But then 6 and 7 are a request to cease DEI efforts, basically saying, oh, it's because the Supreme Court has basically made you like liable for lawsuits if you use the DEI processes. And number 7, a report on charitable giving. I don't want to read the entire first paragraph of this question to you as written, but it's basically saying that some of the most fundamental rights are the rights to free speech and religion, which are recognized by the first. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. I guess Apple needs to give more money to the inauguration.
I just think that the shareholders need to stay in their lane. I just all these shareholder actions are usually driven by somebody who's an idiot, and so it's always some idiotic whatever. And the fact that it's even possible to do this is annoying. Hey, here, kid, have a piece of candy. Like,
it's a public company. That's how it works.
We'll tell you what we're doing. If you don't like it, then divest. Right. if they have a way to vote, it's called selling their stock. Otherwise, be happy that you're in the bus and just shut the up.
Yeah. Didn't Tim say something kind of to that effect at one shareholder meeting a while back?
Steve said it a bunch of times.
Yeah, I think the way Tim put it, and his Tim level of calm, was that we feel as though we deliver great value to shareholders.
Yeah.
If you wish to sell your shares, we feel confident that you'll find someone to buy them from you.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to put it.
It's a much nicer way than I said it. But it's really like, oh my gosh, like you guys just like, I don't think I've ever seen a shareholder thing that I thought, that would be a great idea. It's always some stupid.
TSMC is almost ready for Apple approval for their Arizona chip plant. Of course, this is a big initiative to get more of these chips made outside of China. TSMC is a Taiwanese company, but I think people are even concerned about that. So back in 2020, TSMC announced to build a processor plant in Arizona. By 2022, they expanded plans for a second plant. Tim Cook said, we promise we'll use those processors. According to Nikkei Asia, and I'm reading from Apple Insider, Apple is now in the process of certifying and verifying the processors made in Arizona.
Yeah,
these are 4-nanometer processors.
Yeah, it's what Tim Cook loves to call legacy nodes. Yeah, so it's a step behind what they're doing in Taiwan, but these processors are still throwing out chips that I believe these are the chips that are in the Apple Watch, the current Apple Watch, and as well as the A16, which is in a bunch of sort of secondary products that Apple is making. And I would imagine that's where we will see this all start. Ironically, they're not necessarily going to be cutting edge, but the fact is those legacy nodes get used for a lot of stuff too.
Ironically, these processors will then be shipped to Taiwan and China for packaging.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
And then they'll be putting the iPhones in China.
But it's a start, right? I mean, you can't. It's a chicken and egg thing. Like the more processes you can do outside of Taiwan and China, then the more you are able to withstand something bad happening in Taiwan and China.
This is the result of the 2022 CHIPS Act. That be able
they
to
got
use
$6.6 billion from the CHIPS Act, and that's why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Apple is building a plant in Peoria, Illinois, that will do the packaging, but that won't be ready for a few more years.
Right. Did you see the New York Times did an excellent story about the cultural impact of a bunch of people, because TSMC ultimately is going to employ a lot of people from the United States in these plants, but they also have to bring over their people who know TSMC from Taiwan to get them up and running
and all of that.
And so
Cory Doctorow was talking about this also on Twitter. He said they're paying PhDs to run their EUV and chip manufacturing machines, their fab machines, $50,000 a year in Taiwan. They ain't going to cost $50,000 a year in Arizona.
No, that's true. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why the CHIPS Act is funding this, and that they wouldn't necessarily do it. Although, TSMC may also say, being in another place is probably not the worst idea in the world. But I like the New York Times story because it's about all those workers from Taiwan who are suddenly in the desert in Phoenix, and how do they deal? And it's like there was a small Taiwanese community in Phoenix, but it's in the other side of that valley, which is so huge. But they started to come over, and they put Taiwanese food into the mini malls that are next to the TSMC plant, and that there's the people from Taiwan have to adapt to the very different climate and the educational system and all and like culture of the U.S. It's just the New York Times story was just a great little slice of life about the human fallout from building a Taiwanese chip plant in Phoenix, Arizona, which is it's complicated and interesting, and I thought it was a really cool story.
They call it Tiny Taipei.
Tiny Taipei.
282 new students enrolling in schools in the area.
Yeah.
Chinese-speaking students.
Yep.
It's going to be an interesting cultural shift.
Now, let me tell you, I will say, because my mom lives in Phoenix and I go there a lot, Phoenix is a rapidly growing area. So there are lots of people pouring into Phoenix in general. Among them are this group of people from Taiwan. But and I love the fact that the people who already have the Taiwan community in Phoenix are like, we can help. We understand the culture clash. We can help you work it out, and that's pretty cool too.
Well, and a lot of water engineers, because like the Phoenix is growing so fast. And where are you going to get, like, when I see people build this up, you're
good
like,
luck.
How is this going to work? Like, it's way oversubscribed.
Paolo Bacigalupi wrote an amazing book about this.
The Water Knife.
And I think it will probably prove to be prescient. It's kind of a depressing book, but it really talks about this issue.
Yeah, for sure.
Phoenix is built in the desert.
Yeah, they've got all the land, but no water.
Right. This is a great article. Thank you for pointing it out to us. Arizona's Tiny Taipei, how a Taiwanese chip factory seeded a community, came out at the end of the year last year from John Liu and Jack Healy reporting from Phoenix.
Yeah, great little story.
Yeah. The food looks a lot better, I got to say.
They got to move all the way from Taiwan to Phoenix, and they're like, what the heck am I getting myself into? I'm sure they got, are being paid really well for it by TSMC to have them move there, but what a wild thing for them to adapt to.
Yeah. All right, let's take another little break. I don't have any theme songs, but I can work on them if you want. No? All right. Our show today brought to you by
Unbreak my show. Read another ad.
I love these Suno 4.0 things. It's kind of amazing what you can generate just simply by stealing music from other people.
Members, you won't hear the ad, but don't go away. More content is coming.
We should torture them with music.
No ads.
hold music for the ads.
My old friend.
No, we just cut it out and you get right back to the show. That's why you should join the club, by the way. Ad-free versions of all the shows. None of these interruptions. However, I do know a lot of club members who say, but I like the ads. I learn about new products like our sponsor for this segment, Zscaler. Have you heard of them? They are the leader in cloud security. See, here's the problem. Enterprises have spent billions of dollars on perimeter defenses, firewalls, and then more on VPNs so that your employees can get in through the firewalls. Has this helped? Everything's fine now, right? No. Breaches continue to rise. Ransomware attacks up 18% last year over year. In fact, in 2024, the on record payments for ransomware attacks were $75 million. I have to think it's many times that, the kind of secret payments that people have made. Clearly, the traditional security tools are not working. In fact, they may be bad. They expand your attack surface with public-facing IP addresses, easily exploited by bad actors. Now the bad actors are using AI tools, not just to write Apple scripts, but to write attack scripts, and they're very good and very fast. The other problem with these perimeter defenses, they struggle to inspect encrypted traffic at scale. Why is that important? Because once the bad guy gets in through the perimeter defense, maybe taking advantage of your VPN, or as we've seen many times, once they're in, they start finding things like, emails and customer information, which they then exfiltrate. Of course, they encrypt it before they do, and the firewall can't see it, which means your compromise is an ongoing problem. There's another problem. VPNs and firewalls enable lateral movement. They connect users to the entire network. So now the bad guy can move around, find all the little juicy bits, exfiltrate that, and they can't stop that. Find all the places you put your backups so that when they do trigger the ransomware attack, everything's encrypted. It's a nightmare. Hackers are using AI to exploit traditional security infrastructure to outpace your defenses. You've got to start rethinking your security. We cannot let these bad guys win. They're doing the innovation. They're exploiting your defenses. Fortunately, there's Zscaler Zero Trust Plus AI. It stops attackers by hiding your attack surface. Apps and IPs are invisible. It eliminates lateral movement because connecting users are only connected to specific apps, and only when they have explicit permission, not the entire network. Every request is continuously verified based on identity and context. It's zero trust, but it's easy to implement. You can simplify your security management with AI-powered automation, detecting threats using AI to analyze 500 billion daily transactions. You need AI to do that. Hackers can't attack what they can't see. Protect your organization with Zscaler Zero Trust Plus AI. You can learn more at zscaler.com/security. ZSCALER, zscaler.com/security. Great product. Find out more. Go to the website. And when you do that address, they know you saw it here. zscaler.com/security. We thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly. Wildfires, of course, in LA continue its 7th day. I think we all know people who've lost their homes. We've been evacuated. Kevin Rose, his wife Daria, and their children, and Toaster the dog, all safe. But his home was burned in the fires in Pacific Palisades. He was brand new home. They just built it too. It's very sad. So many people displaced. Apple, of course, donating to Wildfire, recovering. And if you are an Apple Card holder in the area, you can delay payments as well, which I think is
nice.
The least they can do. Yeah, I think that's really good. Great. Anybody we know in the down there in the fires?
I was going to say there's a great Verge story that's basically a profile of the people who did the Watch Duty app, which very rapidly went to like everybody in LA, like on the news.
2 or 3 million downloads in a week.
Yeah, on the local news. So I have the Channels app, which lets you record stuff if you're if your cable company allows it from an internet stream. And one of the weird side effects is you get the local news channels for like 30 different cities. And so I've been spending a lot of time watching the LA local news. And there is a moment where you can see everybody say Watch Duty. And Watch Duty goes from being an app nobody's heard of to an app that literally everybody in LA has heard of. And so Abigail Bassett's story in The Verge is really great, talking about the people who built it. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. And the whole idea is they just want to make it simple. They don't want to track you. They want to get that information out to you. It's got notifications for your area. It came out of the Santa Rosa fires, I believe, is the people who started it.
Our local wildfires. And I've been using it ever since 2018 when those wildfires hit us.
Yeah, and
it's
I love
really good.
The people really have their heart in the right place, and everybody out there, I think in LA especially, has taken to it, and it's great because that's got your immediate warnings about where the fire is going, and the winds are about to pick up again, so it's a good thing for people to know if they need to prepare. They seem to have like a green, yellow, red system. So yellow is get ready, that it's like ready, set, go. Yellow is get set, prepare to evacuate, and then the red is to go, or is it green? I don't know. Red is danger and you should get out of there is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So a great app if you don't have it, free, nonprofit. And just a happy story amidst the terribleness that these people put this great app together to give people information.
Yeah, I mean, I never took it off my phone, and I've turned on notifications, so I get notified if there's a wildfire, and it's very useful because and you live up here too, Jason. You know very well.
Yeah.
So do you, Alex, that we are in a high danger time.
Absolutely.
Right
we
now.
think about it a lot.
We do too.
Yeah,
we do too.
And,
we got a go bag and the whole thing. Like there's a
lot of discussions with our neighbors about like what needs to be cut down and what needs to be moved around, and like just trying to make sure that there's no, but you definitely, there's right across the street from where my house is, there's a whole bunch of charred wood, across the big road, that where the fire got some fire somewhere in the past, not too far in the past, charred everything on that hillside. So we're pretty clear that it's quite possible.
Yeah, we took out all the vegetation around the house. We have just stone everywhere, and you just you kind of cross your fingers. The other problem, of course, in California is getting harder and harder to get home insurance, fire insurance,
and that will only increase now.
Yeah, we were told by our insurer that our insurance is going to be canceled in June. We have to find somebody else. It's horrific. Tim Cook getting a little raise, 18%. Poor Tim. He's only making $74.6 million a year.
But even so, that's another piece of information that's disclosed in the proxy statement that got released a few days ago. I think his base pay is still the same. Like
$3 million, not bad.
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at the documents, like every single one is like, no, none of these like, top executives have had raises in many years.
Right.
It really is all based on performance pay,
as it should be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's he is running a business that generates huge profits for its shareholders and should be compensated. I think there's probably a conversation to be had about how the disparity between the pay of the high executives and the rest of the people who work at Apple. But if you're talking about the highly important compensated people in Cupertino and all, they probably get paid pretty well. So it's I get it. He has increased the value of that company tremendously.
He makes half what the CEO at the United Health Group makes. Just to put it in perspective. Or David Zaslav of Warner Brothers Discovery.
Right. Creating a lot less value, negative value in some cases.
Perspective. He does make more than Linda Su at AMD or Satya Nadella at Microsoft. Or Safra Katz at Oracle, or Bob Chapek at Disney.
And I think that's the point, is we can all like lift an eyebrow at the disparity, which has increased dramatically over time, of CEO pay versus average pay at a company. But in this era, would we say Tim Cook should not be compensated for the value that he's created at Apple? I mean, I wouldn't. He's earned it if anybody has. It's a little different from like a professional athlete where the entire organization is worth billions and only has 100 employees. It's not quite that, but his compensation largely being tied to the stock, right? I mean, kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the opportunity to work. I've worked with Tim Cook, but I've worked with a lot of executives and different breed of person. Like I just have to say that like it's not like anybody can run a company. There's the amount of complexity and the amount of like managing that process. It takes a lot. It is like an athlete. I would say that my experience has been mostly for most of these executives. There's the athletes that you see playing football, professional football, European or American, or baseball or whatever. I mean, they went through a huge winnowing process that got them to that place. And of course, they make mistakes, and some of them are better than others. But I would say that especially now with companies, with what they have to do from a publicly traded company. They're getting paid what you need to pay to keep. Although I don't think that Tim Cook, regardless of any kind of bonus, I think his next job is nothing. Like, I don't think he's not. It's
Running
not like you're giving him a raise to send it to keep him at Apple. I think he's just going to do Apple until he's done, and then go do other things. Yeah.
What do CEOs really do, though? I mean, how important is a CEO really?
Yeah, they're really important.
Yeah.
Really?
yeah. They're like, they are the quarterback, and they are.
I mean, I understand how important Steve Jobs was.
No, there's a lot of them are making a lot of decisions, and it's not just making decisions. They have to make decisions through like 8 levels of decision making. They're looking at what those things are. They have to build an entire team around them that's providing that information. It's a very complicated job, and they have to they have to be looking pretty far down the road. And a bad CEO can drive a company into the ground pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So it's like it's
also,
and that can be done because they take up there's this balance of delegating and also being explicit. And that some things are going to come up to that CEO and they're going to have to make a decision, and some things they have to not make the decision and they're building a team around them that is making those decisions, and they got to know that those people are going to make the right decisions in that area. And there's what I'm always amazed at, again, when I've worked with a lot of CEOs, is that there's this kind of you can tell that they're thinking, and they say just what they need to say. And there's and oftentimes they're very careful. Like, once you get to the C-level of a Fortune 10 company, there's this very careful view of how they look at things and how they talk about it and how they work with others to make that work, and how they it's very important.
So does the CEO decide what the next products are going to be, what money's going to be spent, or is it a team? It feels like it's a team effort.
A good CEO or a bad CEO, right? I mean, this is the thing, is that I would argue a bad CEO makes more decisions and doesn't listen to their team, and a good CEO is enabling the team and enabling the corporate culture. And I forgive me if I've told this story before, but just really quickly, there was one of the more perceptive interviews I've seen. There was an interview when Obama was president where he described his job. Somebody said, like, what comes to your desk? And he said, everybody thinks being president is that you're given these things that are like, well, 70% we should do this, 30% we should do that. And he says, that's not what comes to your desk. When you're president, what comes to your desk is 51-49 or 50.5, 49.5, or literally 50-50. The hard questions, everything else is filtered out. And that is one of the big jobs of the CEO is not everybody agrees. There's no clear answer. You need to think about where you're headed.
That's when you do it.
And you need to affect. I mean, remember when Tim Cook took over at Apple, people are like, oh my God, he's just an operations guy. He can't be a genius like Steve Jobs. Apple is doomed. And what, Tim Cook did was say, I have a whole company full of brilliant people who helped take Apple here and who will help take it to where it needs to go in the next couple of decades. All I'm going to do is, steer the ship and listen to them and make sure we're all going in the right direction. And that is ultimately, that's all you can be as a CEO. I mean, to use a sports metaphor, like, some of the worst head coaches are micromanagers who won't stop calling the plays, and they lose the plot because that's not their job anymore. I would argue that at any kind of like fairly senior level at a company, it is a problem if what you really want to do is the little stuff, because the little stuff, there are people to do the little stuff. You need to think about the big picture.
Yeah, and you need to be able to surround yourself with people that you trust enough. Like when I started doing productions, I told everybody what to do pretty explicitly. Nowadays I hire people that know each individual job better than me, and I ask them what they think. Like, what do you think we should do here?
Yeah.
What do we, and I still got to make a decision, and I know enough to cause damage, but I'm asking for their input, and then figuring out how we coordinate with everybody else to make that happen. And CEOs are at a different scale. I mean, if you look at a company like T-Mobile, John Legere came in, and I did have an opportunity to work with him a little bit.
He transformed T-Mobile, didn't he?
And that's one person who came in and flipped that whole company. And on the outside, he looked pretty crazy some of the time. Like he did this cooking thing and he has all this stuff and he'd wear all these crazy things. And when you saw him actually do a quarterly or whatever, man, I mean, he had all the numbers in his head. He had all the employment in his head. He knew everything about that company inside and out as a CEO would, and was still able to kind of play off this rock star thing. But the rock star thing was all about, it was something he was creating to create the cool factor for T-Mobile, which
part
is
of
what
the
they
job
had.
too, is marketing.
All they had was cool.
Benito says, in my experience working at big corporations, the CEO is always so disconnected from what's actually happening on the ground.
Well, I mean,
that's probably true, right?
I mean, do you think Tim Cook is really connected to what's happening assembling in a factory or working at a retail store? No, but what you want is to create a chain of accountability and understanding and corporate culture so that, Tim might not know, but Tim is talking to his selection of senior vice presidents and they're giving him the scoop about it and he's telling them what they think. And then those people are dealing with people who are probably managing people who are managing people. And that's hard, but like you can understand the gestalt without understanding all the little details, or you can be kind of like in a fantasy world where you're clueless about it. And that's, I mean, I don't know.
Well, to give you an example, RBN in our Discord says, I was an engineer in the Mac OS group at Apple from 1990 to 1997, during which a succession of CEOs, Gil Amelio and
Michael Spindler,
John Scully nearly killed the company.
Yeah.
Right? And then Steve came back to save it, but it was really on its last legs. A good, capable CEO does make a difference.
Yeah, it's a bit of a black art as well. I mean, Sonos is the one that's the obvious one. The Sonos
there's the
CEO
example. They just fired their
got
CEO.
Ejected, and probably their head of product needs to get ejected as well for that. And it's just an interesting thought of like, what did he do wrong and what did he do right? Whatever he did wrong, though, he created a breach between the customers and the company and the brand promise, and that is kind of unforgivable.
Do you think,
failure.
though, that companies in America where the CEOs are getting paid, 10,000% more than the line worker are doing better than companies in Europe where the CEO is paid a much smaller multiple of what the lowest paid employee gets?
I don't think there's any such thing as an irreplaceable CEO. I think there are a lot of people.
It's clear compensation is kind of out of control.
It's a hard job, but it's not as if we have a huge CEO shortage.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say is I think a lot of these CEOs get paid because they're the CEO and not because they're worth it. And that's a difference. I mean, at least Tim Cook can point at what's happened with Apple under his stewardship and he can take some level of credit for it. But I feel in general that disparity is toxic and that if you're making that much money, you should pay your people better. But that's where we are.
No, the hard part is that the scale is when you pay a lot of people a significant amount more, the number is bigger than paying one person a lot of money. It's a the multiplier. You look at the multiplier is 100,000. So I can pay everyone $100 more, and that's $10 million. The thing is that it's and $100 more doesn't move the needle. What they want is $2,000 or $10,000 more, and $10,000 more times 100,000 is a lot of money, and so it's easy to say, oh, we shouldn't do that. But as soon as you start doing actual math about what it takes to move the needle for someone where you're going to give them enough of a raise that it matters, it's a lot. Like it's billions and billions and billions of dollars, and that's the part that doesn't make as much sense.
One CEO I am not sad to see go is Patrick Spence. He was the CEO of Sonos.
Yeah.
And Sonos announced that he will step down effective immediately, which means he was fired.
Yep.
And he's off the board as well.
Was he part of the bricking?
Yeah. So this is a good question because, I mean, how responsible is he for the crappy app, the software and hardware problems Sonos has faced, the how much they've annoyed people like me who spent a lot of money on Sonos equipment by making it obsolete?
I think that he's not directly responsible, but he's definitely picking teams. He's picking the people who pick the teams, and that's the hard part.
Ultimately, he is responsible. That is part of the reason the CEOs get paid, is that CEOs take the bullet, right? Like they really should. This was a disaster, and the board is going to call him to account for it, and so they got rid of him, and that like it's very clear. Look, over the last year, all these statements that have been as this fire has been smoldering at Sonos of like, it's been very slow, low level, but it's like people were mad. They kept saying things. Nothing changed. Then they finally came out and said, well, yes, you're right. It is a disaster, but we can't go back. And in the end, is he responsible? I mean, ultimately, yes, he is responsible. And I think that the fact that the board probably thought he had failed to clean up the mess, right? I think that maybe he had been given the opportunity to fix it, and they were feeling like it didn't get fixed. And so maybe they're wrong. Maybe he was working on it and then they're going to be too capricious. But boy, from the outside, I look at that and think there's several people at senior levels inside Sonos who made colossal mistakes, including the guy who is still there so far, who was the head of product design, and probably need to go based on the reports about how they totally misexecuted this.
Yep.
It's a shame.
Can't say I'm happy about his firing, I'll be honest with you, even though I still have a lot of Sonos equipment.
I never want to be gleeful about people losing their jobs. And we don't know the complexities of the story. I don't want to say like this person should be fired. The
what
CEO
I want
ultimately
is
has
for
to stand
Sonos
up for
fix the problem.
And that's why I think that maybe the issue is not that they had this problem, that they fired the CEO now suggests to me that the board is not convinced that they know what the problem is and that they are fixing it. And I agree. I mean, Sonos is a premium brand that it is. I saw somebody referred to them as the Apple of audio, and that it's so true. Their stuff is really expensive, but people rely on it. And like, it shows you how little space there is between you having a very successful premium brand and burning your whole brand down.
Well, and the saying is, of course, trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback. And the problem is that I have 14 Sonos amps that don't really work, and I would never buy a Sonos product again. Like, just ever. Like, there's no way. And I thought it was a cool brand, and I would never ever
thousands on Sonos.
I see the brand, I see the logo of Sonos, and I'm angry. And that's
me too.
That's a huge mistake. Like, that's how you really screw something up. Is that the amount of digging that is required to get out of that hole is a lot when you have people who are passionate about your product that now hate you, and would never buy anything, would never give you another chance, and I don't even have another solution yet, it's just, but it's so frustrating.
Jason says he has a golden parachute. Oh, well.
He does. That guy is going to get paid. He's like consulting. Nobody's going to talk to him. River. Yeah, he's gonna get millions to look out the window and then take his leave. And that's how the game is played. But I mean, when we talk about CEO compensation, let's just say it. Like, this is part of it. Is the CEO, like, in a bad situation, you can destroy value for the shareholders and you can destroy your brand. Yeah. And that's like what you need to not do. And that does come back to the CEO. In the end, they have to be responsible for that.
And definitely like a football team, if you're having a winning season and you keep on making your quarterly keeps on going up, they're going to do everything they can to keep that quarterback. And if you have a couple losing seasons, hey, who can we put in? Who can we replace?
Yeah, the great John Madden line is winning is a great deodorant. It masks a lot of underlying sense. And then when you stop winning, suddenly you realize that it stinks.
Jammer B has all of our old Sonos speakers we had. How many do we have, Jammer B, in the East Side studio? We had like a dozen or something that had been accumulated over the years. He's able to use them. He's keeping them working, but he only can do it by downgrading SMB on one of his NASs. So that's not a perfect solution. Just don't expose it to the outside world, John. You'll probably be okay. Let's take a little break. Your picks of the week, gentlemen. And I want to thank Andy for his pick of the week last week, a couple of weeks ago, but we'll talk about that when we return. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Andy Inatko, Alex Lindsay, Jason Snell. Our show today brought to you by ZocDoc. When you need a doctor, you need a doctor. You need somebody competent, right? When you need a doctor, you need to be able to go somewhere and find the right doctor fast, right? I have a lot of experience with this recently. And then there's the typical thing. My wife, our CEO, by the way, often says, you live longer because you're married to me, because I make you go to a doctor. How often, especially as guys, we just, I'll be all right. I'm going to rub a little dirt on it. It's going to heal on its own. Maybe if it were easier to find a great doctor who really could help, that wouldn't happen. But it's just so daunting Not just finding a doctor, but finding one that takes your insurance, one that has appointments. Lately, I've run into a lot of doctors who say, no, I'm not taking any new patients. Maybe they saw me coming. Well, thanks to ZocDoc, there's no delay. They make it easy to find and book a doctor who's right for you. ZocDoc, it's a free app or website. You can do it either way. I actually keep the app on my phone because you never know. Where you can search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors and even click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers. Wow. It's not just MDs, by the way. It's across every specialty: mental health, dental health, primary care, urgent care, chiropractors, and on and on and on. You can filter for docs who can take your insurance, who are located nearby. You get to set the range. I think the most important thing to me, verified reviews from actual patients that really give you an idea of how this doctor deals with his patients, how good she is, whether she was helpful. I love that. And every doctor has a little bit of a different style. Do you want somebody with a great bedside manner or somebody who's like Mr. Spock who could just give you all the information? Well, you can find out in the reviews, and they're verified. They're real reviews. Then once you find the doctor that fits your needs, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit. By the way, this is how ZocDoc gets all those great doctors. It's a great thing for them, too. Plus, ZocDoc appointments, they happen fast, typically within just 24 or 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. I love ZocDoc. I use ZocDoc. I've used it many times. I was thrilled to find a specialist in gerontology for my mom. Stop putting off those doctor appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/MacBreak to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. That's ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. Make sure you use that URL so they know you saw it on MacBreak Weekly. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. ZocDoc. I want to play that again. I like that. Thank you, ZocDoc, for supporting MacBreak Weekly. Pick of the week time, Mr. Jason Snell.
The Thunderbolt dock comes for us all eventually.
I got it.
Leo
you got the good one, though.
Summer.
You got a good one.
Doc Rock picked this at one point in the history. I checked on mbwpicks.com, your official source for picks of the past. But I'm deciding that I just bought one, so I will pick it again. CalDigit's TS4 dock. It is not cheap, but it's got 18 ports, and it allows you to lead what I think is one of the most important things to do if you're a laptop user, which is the single plug lifestyle.
I love it.
Out here in my office, I now have a MacBook Pro as my main system so that I can work at a desk in the back of my house, or I can work out here. And with the TS4, single plug provides power and data to my MacBook Pro. It all runs through the TS4. Hanging off the TS4 is all the other stuff. And it includes my keyboard and my Stream Deck and my trackpad and my USB microphone interface and my Thunderbolt-driven studio display and all the stuff that's attached to the studio display, including my camera. It's all hanging off of that one dock. And so that dock has all the cables. That's the mess of wires that you expect to come off of a computer. Because when I come out here, I don't want to plug in 8 things or 5 things or whatever. I don't want to do that. I want to plug in one cable, and that's living the dream for a laptop person when you're docking at a desk, and I can do it, and it was enabled by that TS4, so it was totally worth the price.
I waited for this one for months. 18, it was back ordered. It was
18 ports. It's got ports I don't even need to use. It's got like a couple different audio ports on it. It's got like an SD card reader on it. It's got all the, it's anything you ever need. But the key is it's got multiple Thunderbolt ports on it. Ooh. Because I need to have Thunderbolt out to drive my display, as well as, coming out of the computer. But the fact that it also provides power, so my laptop remains fully charged while I use it here. Just one cable. Love it. Couldn't love it more.
You truly one dongle to rule them all.
It's the way to live. It is the way.
I purchased mine May 2022, and I still use it. Although I will see your Thunderbolt 4, and I will raise you Thunderbolt 5
Well, it's pretty nice.
This is the Otherworld Computing
OWC,
Thunderbolt 5 dock. It's half as expensive, but it also has fewer than half the ports.
Yeah, that's the problem. There are a lot of great ports out there. I have an Anchor. It's actually a USB-C. And it's got, a couple USB-C and some USB-A on it and Ethernet. I have a couple of these that are pretty nice too. The challenge is if you need like full speed Thunderbolt and a bunch of USB-C, the pickings get slimmer and slimmer because I think that there are lots of challenges with data and power as you start to add those ports.
I think it's expensive too. I think you have to license the chips or something.
And keep in mind, most of these things are being built out of very specific chipsets that are being built or boards that are being built. And that's why they all look the same. They all have the same ports on them and all of that. And it's not likely that somebody's going to do a bespoke design for this. So you sort of have to take what you get.
I trust CalDigit. I think they did
it's a solid
good job. Yeah.
And I'll give one tip that I'll throw out. There is a Thunderbolt 4 dock from CalDigit being sold in the Apple Store. You can get that, but it's not quite the same. Like, my understanding is like CalDigit releases firmware updates for its ones that you can get on Amazon. The one in the Apple Store, I don't think they do firmware updates on. I think it's like special Apple Store SKU. Something to keep in mind. If you can get a better price or even the same price outside the Apple Store, you might be better off buying that model and not the one that seems to be the same, but is not quite the same at the Apple Store.
Harumph.
Yeah.
I got this because it's Thunderbolt 5 and I have the new Mac Mini. But there's nothing. I don't need Thunderbolt 5.
You really need it if you need a Thunderbolt 5 drive with that speed or something else that requires Thunderbolt 5.
Thunderbolt 5
I did my calibrations. I was like, I actually thought about buying the CalDigit TS4 dock, which is just Thunderbolt 3, and that would probably be fine. But I was like, okay, I'll buy this thing now and then I'll keep it for years and it'll be fine at Thunderbolt 4. I don't need more than that.
I am using this TS4 dock right now as part of my studio setup with the MacBook M3. So that's what you're seeing me on. It's right over here. I would disconnect it, but the whole thing would go to fall.
Yeah. And then a little tidbit as an aside, I have a switching power strip under my desk that turns off a bunch of stuff that's not necessary when I'm not working. And I thought, what am I going to do now that I'm not using a Mac Studio anymore? How am I going to get that power to flip off? Because I would like that power to turn off when I'm not out here. It's a bunch of other stuff that doesn't need to be on. And it turns out the answer is I plugged not the computer, I plugged the dock into the sensor switch because guess what? It doesn't draw very much power unless you plug a laptop into it, at which point it draws a lot of power because it has to power the laptop. And so I plug in the laptop and all the other stuff turns on too.
Smart.
Because the CalDigit is now pulling a lot more power. Pretty cool.
Very smart.
That's my pick.
Good pick. I want to thank Andy for his Anchor 140 watt power supply pick. Nice. Mine came. I'm thrilled. It does. Everything's off the bottom. So when you plug it in, the cables are going down, which I like. Thank you, Andy. That was a great pick. I appreciate it. What have you got for us this week?
My pick is actually related. At the end of that pick, like I actually recommended it when we're talking about, hey, the great thing about this new one is that it's got not just four USB-C ports, but each one delivers enough power that you can fast charge like everything you've got in your bag all at once from like just one outlet. And I recommended a technique, but not the tool I used to do that. Every time
everybody wanted to know, how do you do that, Andy? Yeah. How do you do that?
so for instance, like there are things you kind of need to know. Like this is the adapter that it replaced. So that this has like 3 ports on it. It's 100 watts total. And I have to remember that if I use both of the USB-C ports, the top one is going to be delivering 60 watts. The bottom one is going to be delivering 40 watts. So I'll make sure that I plug my MacBook into the top one, my iPad into the bottom one. There's also another one for the third. And so, but this is something I do like with all of like my power jacks. I make sure that like the information I need to use them and not screw up either my day or my hardware is written right on it. And that's why I have the Pentel Presto correction pen. This is something that I've found out about from an Adam Savage video on Tested, because he uses it to write labels on stuff on drawers and stuff like that. It's technically a correction fluid for when you're typing and you need to white something out, but actually it is full of like a very, very completely opaque white ink that is completely durable. And I'm trying to find out exactly what kind of like paint it is, but it's the kind where like you have to shake it up, and there's a thingy in it to keep it shaken up, like when you're using it. And it's not like a felt tip. It literally is. This part of it is squeezable. So you have to basically hold it like gravity down and give it a little bit of a squeeze as you write, and it will eject some. It will squeeze a little bit of paint out. I always have to, if I haven't used this in a while, I have to like practice because it's easy to get really, really gloppy with it. But the thing is, and they're dirt cheap. They're like on Amazon, they're like $5.50. At other office supply stores, you can get them like 10 of them for like $3 each. And if you have these around, every time you've got something that you just need a label on it, whether it's an organization bag, whether it's a power adapter, whether it's a drawer or something, you can just quickly write on it. After like 30 seconds, it'll dry. This thing has been rattling around like my backpack like every week when I come here for like months and months and months. It's still perfect, and this wasn't the first time that I used it either. If you cover it with nail polish, clear nail polish, if you really are concerned about it flaking off, but super durable. It is really one of those things where like, it's high ratio of how little money I spent and how many annoyances in my life were like done away with once I had access to Presto correction pen technology.
You've
convinced me. It's really an age of wonders.
I have like the Dymo labeler, but it's just too much trouble to type out a label each time.
I have one too, and I think I got that on Alex's recommendation one week, and I do use it. But the thing is, like, oftentimes it's like, oh right, oh god, okay, is it plugged in? Yeah, okay. Do I have a material for it, like the tape for it? Okay. Oh, I need to use the phone that has the app on it. And actually, all I want to do is like, I'm just go rummaging through a box of stuff, say, oh right, this is the adapter. Before I forget, this is the adapter for that circular cutter I have. Get the pen, adapter for circular cutter, and I'm done.
Yeah. It is cheaper to buy it directly from Presto than it is to buy it, or from Pentel rather, than it is to buy it on Amazon for some reason. So, does it stick better than, like, I use silver Sharpie Sharpies? Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. You can. This is me rubbing my fingernail on the A and amps, and it's not coming off. Right. One thing I will absolutely tell you: it is 1,000 times more opaque than those Pentel pens. Excuse me, than those pens that you talked about. It's the Sharpies. It will deposit a. It feels like with the Sharpies, you're depositing a thin layer of silver or gold particles to the surface. Whereas with this one, you have a paintbrush and you are obliterating it with white paint. This thing is like, you can see this from a mile away. You don't have to crawl under the table to see this adapter. You can just glance and you say, oh, 15 volts, 2 amps, got it.
I just bought 3.
Again, practice with them first. Me. When it's in your hand, and also it comes with a nice cap with a clip on it.
Is it one of those things where the smell's gonna you're gonna go, wow?
It has no smell whatsoever.
So even better.
I forgot what I was going to say, but I'm saying make sure you practice with it. Again, it looks like a pen. It looks like a lot of like felt tip pens you've seen that has like a metal barrel on it, and you'll wonder, gee, why is the ink not coming out? Why is the ink not coming out? And you might shake it, and you wind up shaking paint over the thing.
Don't shake it.
Or you'll suddenly, oh, that's right, I have to squeeze it, and then you'll squeeze it like you're frosting a cake, and then you put a big blob of it, just a little bit of fingertip pressure. Okay. Use a squeeze to get it started. Yep.
Gentle squeezing on the Presto Jumbo Correction Pen.
Now I'm adding gentle squeezing, no shaking to the list of possible show titles.
Don't squeeze it, shake it. No, don't shake it, squeeze it.
Andy's got this episode title covered wall to wall.
Yeah. From fat squirrel
Start
on.
to finish, man.
Football squirrel on.
No, do not shake or squeeze the football shaped squirrel, by the way.
That's maybe the real title.
It's too long.
Alex Lindsay.
Who had mid-January 2025 as the episode in which the team would go totally insane and need to be put away someplace? I had it.
Alex already talked about this pick.
I talked about this a little bit.
You're using it a lot, I think.
Man,
huh?
you think that you're gonna you get into media production and you think you're gonna spend all your time plugging in cameras and stuff like that, but eventually you end up in Google Sheets. And you're doing a lot of stuff in Google Sheets or Numbers or Excel, and you're trying to figure out how to manage lots of projects and lots of particles and keep people going. And it's easy for me to run out of, like, it starts to get pretty complicated to have complex data interactions with Google Sheets. I mean, it's great because everyone can interact with it, but it's hard to build a real database with it. I know people who can, I can't. And so I was on the outside in for a long time with Airtable, and now I'm building something I can't show. But I have to deal with many teams, hundreds of people, many locations, and everybody has to have their own view of the data. Like, that's the big thing, is that they have to, I can send out I can send out a form, for instance, that everyone has to do. That has to feed all back into that data, and it's a relational database, and I need it to all look at, and Airtable is the thing that it's not cheap, but it is, if you're looking for something that is really, I spent a lot of time. I mean, I programmed a radio station with HyperCard, and then spent years doing
this is the replacement for HyperCard.
Well, it's a lot more than that. And I used FileMaker for a long time. And so what I was looking for is something that's kind of an online database. But what happens is that you can very, very quickly build lots of views of your data. So you got the same source of truth, which is the data. And, Salesforce would do that for even more money. But this is a very, very easy way to build UXs that are, hey, I want to display the data this way for these people, but I don't want them to touch it. I just want them to see it. And then these people, I want them to edit it. And then some people, I want to fill forms out that feed into the system. And so all of these different things that have to happen, I can make them all work from one source of truth. And I can pump out, like, someone needs something that I just need to see this information. I can push that out as its own interface in minutes, and it's still driven back. If I make a change on my database, their interface changes to what it looks like, and it takes me almost no time to put that together. And so it is, if you're trying to manage, more complex, I mean, there's a lot of things that I will say that now that I have Airtable, I'm not really using, I used Google Sheets, and I use Numbers for building quotes, and then I used Google Sheets for anything we had to interact with lots of people. I think that the Numbers I still use because it's pretty quick. I'm pretty fast at it. But for Google Sheets, I think that if you own Airtable, you'll stop using that. Like, you'll start to just go into Airtable for this. I will say the danger is that, man, it's addicting, and then you can't. It's the lock-in. I'm sure is going to be pretty heavy because there's so much data and it's tied together so well that. Have you ever used
Notion or Coda or any of the other competition? I'm just curious.
I don't know if those are really competition. I mean, I think that those are for personal, managing things. I think this is at a different scale. Like, it's, so I think that I wouldn't. I don't.
How about is the free version worth trying? It's $20 per seat per month if you go with a team.
Yeah, I think that's the version that we have right now. Probably going to go up to another version above it. But the free version is definitely, you can jump in and start building stuff.
See what's going on.
See what's going on. It took me a little time, and again, there's still things that I'm like, oh, how do I do this? And I will say it's very well documented. I sit there with ChatGPT opened all the time. I think I mentioned this earlier, and I'm trying to build something in Airtable, and so far ChatGPT's batting average is 100. Like, I just say, how do I do this? And it just tells me how to do it, and I just go, okay, this is how I'm going to do this thing in Airtable. And
they offer an AI plugin themselves. Do you use that?
I have not been successful at using their AI. I've been successful at using ChatGPT's. I tell it what I want, and when it comes out of it, I'm like, nah, that's not really what I was looking for. So I mean, I think I think maybe someday it'll be great. But right now, it's and again, it's as you keep on. The reason I got into it is that I have to build something very complex that's going to keep growing over many years. That's going to have a lot of data in it. And usually, what happens is you start in Google Sheets and you build up to a certain point where you've now outrun what it's designed to do. And now you have to figure out how to port all that information to something new. And I decided, hey, let's just do that at the beginning and start building all the data when it's small. And so that's what I'm working on. And it's pretty powerful. If you're looking for that kind of thing, lots of different views of the data and the ability to generate new interfaces that are isolated for given certain people but still dynamic. It's a pretty powerful
It's been
system.
around for a long time, and I know a lot of people really love it. One of our club members, Mike Gaines, says, "Oh, I love Airtable. Run my entire business with it, and automations, interfaces, API, etc." He also says the free version works great for most things. So thank you, Mike, for seconding.
We started with I had the free version for a week, and I was like, "Oh, this is great!" and immediately hit the wall, like of what I wanted to do, and so I had to start paying. It was like this is amazing, and I had put it off for a long time. I've been on projects where someone's using Airtable and they're providing it to me, and I was like, "Oh, this is fine," and I really resisted. I was like, "I want to learn something new," so I resisted it for months. When we were trying to figure out what to do, and once I gave up on that, I'm in it all. I'm in it half the day. So
Interesting, cool. Airtable.com. It's not free, but there's a free.
There's a free version.
Kind of mess with it a little bit.
The first hit is free.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex Lindsay. Thank you for being here. OfficeHours.global. What's going on over there in the office hours?
We're starting to do this thing where we experiment, where someone just kind of comes in at the last minute, right at the very beginning of the show, and talks a little bit. Last week, Laura Davidson from Shure came in. They had announced a new mic, and so she just
you said that was going to happen. Yeah,
and showed it, and then we had Kirk Haller, who was the head of YouTube Live engineering, just dropped in on Friday.
Wow,
answered some questions. So you never know what's going to happen.
We're
not announcing. We're not announcing them, so you never know what's going to happen at the top of the hour. So some of them are like, if we can schedule somebody in to talk about some specific thing for that moment, it's really these little 15-minute hits at the top, just to give a little information, and then we might come back to it later. With Kirk, he jumped into After Hours, our non-broadcasted version, for another half hour after the show to keep answering questions about YouTube and YouTube Live and stuff like that. So we'll continue to that's kind of a new thing that we're starting to play with.
OfficeHours.global, but I would recommend also the YouTube page, Office Hours Global.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. You're built up now a huge quantity of very useful.
You can
stuff here.
Watch. We produce a new hour a day. so there's of talking and every day we don't know, we're just answering people's questions, so there's not, other than these little things that happen at the top of the hour occasionally, otherwise we answer about anywhere from 15 to 25 questions every morning. We don't know what they're going to be, we don't know who's showing up, but so far we haven't missed a day since any day, holidays or Sundays, since May 25th, 2020. And so we're always up there answering people's questions, and it's always interesting to see what people are working on.
OfficeHours.global. Thank you, Alex. WGBH is calling Andy Anatko. Oh, when are you going to be on next?
Tomorrow, as a matter of fact, on Wednesday, 12:30 Eastern Time. Go to WGBHnews.org to watch it live or later. We're in the library. I don't know if I'm going to be in the library. I'm going to be in a library. I don't know if I'm going to be in the Boston Public Library or my local library.
Some library.
But I will be in one or two of those things.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate you, my friend. And also, of course, Jason Snell, sixcolors.com. He is a legend in the Macintosh community. You can also hear many podcasts at sixcolors.com/Jason.
Yes.
What's
Some
the latest?
say there is a person named Jason out there somewhere. Others think it's just.
Are you talking about Severance? We're only a week away from its return.
I do not have a podcast about Severance. You can check out Upgrade on Relay, where Mike Hurley and I talk about stuff. And probably in a couple of weeks, the Six Colors report card on Apple for 2024 will be out. And this is my reminder to you fellows to fill out your report card.
I got my email and I haven't done it yet. I will get around to that.
I was focusing so hard on it that I said I'm going to give myself 2 weeks of thought.
Yeah, well, the thought process there is I don't want to shock people, so I tell them that they've got 2 weeks to work on it. And I know that then by not shocking them, they all say, 2 weeks, I'll just leave it. It's okay. I've done this for 10 years now. You'll get a reminder email from me.
Thank you, Jason. And here, for your edification and delectation, is a football-shaped squirrel. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We do MacBreak Weekly every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. That's 1900 UTC. You can watch us do it live If you're a club member, thank you very much, club members, by the way. That's a wonderful thing to do. You get a great feeling, a real warm feeling throughout your entire body when you pay that $7 a month. But you also get access to the Club Twit Discord, ad-free versions of all the shows. You can watch the show and talk about it in the behind the scenes, be one of the wiseacres in the back room watching the show. So that's one place you can watch it, Discord, twit.tv/clubtwit if you're not yet a member. Also, you can watch it on YouTube. There's a live stream there. Twitch, Kick, TikTok. And you know what? Even if they ban TikTok, we're still going to stream on TikTok. So there. Because I don't know why. Because they're not going to ban our streaming on it, which is weird. What else? X.com, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We're on all the Nazi platforms. So come on and watch. I'm being facetious, but we're on all the platforms. And some of them are Nazis. But not us. We're nice guys. Watch live if you want. You don't have to. It's easier to watch or listen whenever you're in the mood. So for that, we've got a website, twit.tv/mbw, if you want to subscribe. You can also go to your favorite podcast player and get it automatically as soon as it's available. You can also watch it on YouTube. There's a YouTube link at twit.tv/mbw. So there are lots of places to watch, lots of places to go. Anthony, you think we're going to red note if TikTok? See, TikTok's not going to go away, though. We're going to find out soon. I'm sure the Supreme Court will rule.
Tomorrow, supposedly.
Yeah. Actually, tomorrow, Kathy Gellis will be joining us on Twig. She is an attorney admitted to the Supreme Court, and we'll talk about the oral arguments and maybe about the decision.
It feels like nothing's going to happen. Like we're just going to get to the other side, and everyone's going to, other than possibly the largest move to VPN in the history of the world.
You won't even need to do that. The only thing the law does
is download new ones.
Yes, is it prevents Apple and Google from putting it in their store. It does not prevent ISPs. It does not prevent you from having TikTok. You just won't be able to get a new version. That's all. And we can stream on it.
Yeah, I kind of felt like this whole rush to stop the whatever by January 19th. I was like, we're all going to get up on January 20th. It's all going to be pretty much the same for a long time. Like
I have a feeling the Supreme Court's going to protect it, but who knows? Who knows? I don't have a dog in this hunt. We'll go to. He's saying we're going to Red Note. I never even heard of Red Note. Is that another Nazi bar?
It's the number one downloaded free app on the Apple App Store. It is a Chinese basically version of TikTok. That basically as a middle finger, TikTok saying, "Okay, I'm going to create an account on the absolutely. You think TikTok is Chinese? I'm going to go double Chinese, Mister Man."
Oh, perfect. You can't win in this world. You just can't. Thank you all for being here. I look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday. Stay tuned if you're watching live. Security Now is just around the corner. Meanwhile, it is my sad duty to tell you you've got to get back to work because break time is over. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.